Chapter 626. What are you guys talking about sneaking around here? Chu Danqing walked out of the bamboo forest with a flushed face. His alcohol tolerance had improved quite a bit compared to before. He also felt very carefree tonight. After killing his 3 senior brothers and sisters, he felt sorry for them, but in the end, excitement and joy prevailed. Chu Shidao living in seclusion in the forest had a lot to do with these 3 traitorous disciples. It could be considered as cleaning up the family. Of course I'm talking about your favorite woman. Come on, let's go back and continue drinking. Li Qingshan laughed and glossed over it. He put his arm around the 2's shoulders and returned to the clearing in the forest. The moonlight danced in the secluded bamboo forest. Han Thierry pressed a wine jar with one hand and sat in front of a rock. His expression was cold and serious as he silently drank cup after cup of wine. The sound of the zither was quiet. Qinshin sat in front of the table and played the zither. Her fingers played slowly and lightly, and the sound of the zither was endless like a clear stream, making people forget about their worries. After a period of hard cultivation, she finally succeeded in building her foundation and became the head of the Le clan. Mind Enlightenment held the prayer beads and listened attentively, but he was drinking water. Everyone present was a young foundation building cultivator. Seniors like Liu Changqing consciously did not participate. When they saw Li Qingshan and the others return, they all greeted them. They paid special attention to Li Qingshan. Although everyone present was a talent, they were still very far away from the Golden Core realm. It was not even certain if they could survive the second heavenly tribulation. He was the only one who had truly touched the edge of the Golden Core realm, and at such a young age. Originally, he was the youngest among them, but everyone seemed to regard him as their leader. Although they were still reserved and did not flatter him, they all wanted to befriend him. You've been gone for a while, so you've missed a great part of the song. Do you want me to play it again? Qinshin smiled as she pressed the zither. Although she said you, her eyes were fixed on Li Qingshan. Wei Yangsheng said, Qinshin, that's not fair. Aren't we supposed to accompany you and listen to it again? Qinshin said, you conceal your hearing first. I'll call you after I finish playing. No, that would be an even greater loss. Li Qingshan smiled and said, Qinshin, if you don't tell me, I definitely won't be able to tell if there's more or less. Just continue playing. Hua Sungzon, who had always been elegant, actually walked to the side of the wine jars and drank 3 jars of wine in a row, causing a burst of applause. Chu Danqing said in a clear voice, such a beautiful scenery on such a fine day, heroes and beauties, it's a perfect fit for a painting. As he spoke, he took out his paints and brushes and began to paint. Just as the brush was about to land on the paper, he stopped and shook his head. There's still one thing missing. What's missing? There's only zither music, no sword chi. I also want poems and songs. Wei Yangsheng drew his sword, reciting poems as he danced with his sword. His sword aura and sword aura were restrained but not released, like a startling dragon. Li Qingshan also nodded slightly. The Confucian school's swordsmanship was indeed extraordinary. Walking to Han Thierry's side, he sat down and said with a smile, Tie, I heard that you've been quite lucky with women recently. Don't waste too much of your energy and embarrass the Han family during the exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures. Han Thierry glanced at him disdainfully. If you're envious, you can do the same. Li Qingshan said, but no one wants me to have more children. The exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures this time probably won't be that simple. You have to be prepared. The same goes for you. With the great General Lord's orders, Edan won't dare to do anything to the Han family for now, but if he has the chance, he'll definitely think of a way to kill you. Him holding back is the scariest thing. I don't want my sister to become a widow before marrying into the family. Don't worry, I'm also the son-in-law of the Han family. At this moment, Chu Danqing had already finished the last stroke, completing the banquet in the bamboo forest painting. Everyone gathered around to take a look, only to see that everyone's voice and smile had entered the painting, vivid and lifelike. Best of all, they could even hear the music of the zither and see the flying sword chi. Qinshin couldn't help but ask, Danqing, you're in such a good mood tonight, but you still haven't told us what you went to do with Qingshan. Chu Danqing's mind cleared. and he couldn't help but look at Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan nodded slightly. The deaths of 3 Foundation establishment cultivators was no small matter. It would be exposed very soon, and deliberately hiding it would only make him look guilty. Chu Danqing then roughly explained the whole story, but he hid the secret of the painting tomb and the matter of the purple talisman. When he finished in one breath, the bamboo forest fell completely silent. Only the sound of the wind could be heard whistling through the forest. Everyone's gazes gathered on Li Qingshan's face once more. Aside from respect, there was also some fear. He had killed 3 Foundation establishment cultivators by himself, and after returning, he was still chatting and drinking as if nothing had happened. It's not that I'm fond of killing, it's just that the circumstances of the world push me. If I don't kill, people will kill me. Li Qingshan took out the recording stone and replayed what the 3 of them had said. He felt helpless. I didn't think they'd be so bold. They all deserved to die. Wei Yangsheng scolded furiously, and the others all chimed in. However, no one present was an idiot. They all thought to themselves, you've even prepared a recording stone, so it's probably not just because the circumstances of the world push you. Under his forthright appearance, there was no lack of schemes. As it seemed, he had his own reasons for being bold enough to oppose Edan in public. However, if he had such a powerful friend, then it would be for the best. Danqing, why didn't you ask us to go with you and support you? With Qingshan taking action, is there a need for us to interfere? Haha, that's true. Compared to elegant matters like poetry, playing the zither, or painting, at the end of the day, the most primitive form of slaughter was more convincing. The prevalence of duels in the Dragon Province was not without reason. Late in the night, the banquet dispersed just now. Li Qingshan was already 70 to 80% drunk, only 20 to 30% sober. He continued to refine water with his mirror clone. After leaving the 100 schools of thought, he originally wanted to return to the Qing Xiao dwelling. However, he changed his mind and flew into an underground cavern. He transformed and erased his presence, turning back into North Moon. He smiled. Maram Spider Queen, I'm coming. He flapped his wings of wind and flew through the complicated cavern. Very soon, he sensed Helicoverpa Rosa's presence. He smiled and directly passed through the obstruction of countless rocks, arriving in a huge space. Strands of spider silk crisscrossed, forming a huge web. A cold, elegant woman in tight black clothes stood in the center of the web. She looked at him with hostility. North Moon, what are you doing here? Obviously because I missed you. Li Qingshan smiled drunkenly and studied the surroundings. This is Cobweb City. More accurately speaking, it was the cavern where Cobweb City stood. During the battle, Cobweb City had been destroyed, and the cavern had collapsed before being flooded. However, as time went on, the water receded, and the cavern stabilized once more. Helicoverpa Rosa then returned and used it as her nest. Li Qingshan arrived behind Helicoverpa Rosa in a flash and pressed her against the center of the web. He leaned over and smiled. As they say, a single night as husband and wife means 100 nights of devotion. Did you miss me? Helicoverpa Rosa said coldly, I wanted to kill you. Then it's best if you don't try that again. I'm afraid I won't be able to hold back my killing intent, and it'll be bad if we end up breaking off all ties. Li Qingshan touched her beautiful cheeks and gently slid it down to her chest. He grabbed a plump mound and played around with it recklessly. Although it still paled slightly in comparison to Begonia's sturdiness, it was much more bouncy. He felt like he was about to flick his fingers away with a gentle squeeze. His lust immediately boiled. The lust that he had not fully indulged with Han Qiongji, the lust that had been stirred up by Begonia, and the demonic nature and brutality that had been stirred up by his second senior sister today erupted in his body while he was tipsy. Ah! Helicoverpa Rosa cried out gently. A wave of pain came from her chest. Li Qingshan's fingers sank deeply into the plump mound. Even her body found it rather difficult to endure the great strength of the 5th layer of the ox demon, but he completely ignored it. He used even more force. When he caressed Han Qiongji, even though the spirit turtle had already suppressed most of its power, he still had to be careful, afraid of hurting her. It was even more so now. However, He did not have as many qualms when it came to Helicoverpa rosa. He lowered his head and kissed her scarlet lips. His hands explored every part of her body. Every time he caressed her, she would feel a wave of pain. However, the lust in her eyes grew stronger and stronger. A while later, Li Qingshan raised his head and asked, "Do you want me to rip your clothes off, or do you want to take them off yourself?" Helicoverpa rosa spread her arms. The black, tight-fitting clothes that she had weaved meticulously unraveled like silk from a cocoon. Her smooth, white body was completely revealed before Li Qingshan. Two dark red spots trembled slightly on her snowy peaks. Her slender legs crossed each other. It was an extremely enchanting sight. After Li Qingshan had violently conquered her body, she could no longer search for offerings freely like before she killed him. Her body was also filled with lust. As a demon, she was not very good at suppressing her lust. Moreover, it was in her nature to submit to the strong. Regardless of whether he still had hatred or dissatisfaction in his heart, he had already proven his great strength, so he had this authority. Furthermore, he was the only male who had authority at the moment. North Moon, I will definitely kill you with my own hands. Right now. Before Helicoverpa rosa could even finish speaking, Li Qingshan had already started a new round of conquest. After a while, Li Qingshan stretched in satisfaction. He had completely sobered up. Helicoverpa rosa fell into a deep sleep at the side. Although this place is nice, it's not my home after all. After resting, I can continue cultivating. At this moment, he suddenly felt a strong sense of danger. He immediately raised his guard. It's the spirit turtle's warning. Someone wants to deal with me. Could it be that Helicoverpa rosa has come up with another move to trick me? I won't let her off this time. Li Qingshan waited for a while, but there was no movement around him. No, that's not right. It's from the mirror clone's side. In that instant, he completely focused his mind on the mirror clone 500 kilometers away. The mirror clone was currently controlling the water god seal to refine a river. Although he still could not see the enemy, he could vaguely feel an invisible net looming over him. To be able to make the spirit turtle feel such a strong sense of danger, the enemy could not be compared to the three fools of the school of painting. Chapter 627. It happened to be early in the morning right now. A thin mist drifted over the surface of the water, and the air was clear and transparent. Everything seemed so peaceful. However, the sense of danger in Li Qingshan's heart did not decrease at all. Instead, it grew heavier and heavier. The enemy must have used a method to conceal their figures and auras. Li Qingshan made up his mind immediately and stopped refining the water. He completely erased his aura before swimming upstream and changing his position. He was like a spirit turtle diving into the abyss of the ocean, completely vanishing without a trace. No matter how sharp the soul sense of the enemy was, they would struggle to lock onto his location. Afterwards, he used his senses to search for the enemy. Sure enough, his sudden disappearance threw the enemy into some confusion. Although he still did not leak out a single aura, the momentary waver in their minds gave the spirit turtle a clear direction for its senses. The spirit turtle suppresses the seas. There are 3 enemies, and they're all people I've interacted with in the past. Oh, so it's them. Sure enough, they can't help themselves anymore and want to make trouble for me. The corner of Li Qingshan's lips curled into a smile, but his gaze was very stern. The newcomers were Sai Qing, Yi Dan, and Jiao Zhen. They surrounded him from 3 different directions. Although they were only at Golden Core, Li Qingshan dared not be careless at all. He had not forgotten how the Dark Queen had dominated the Golden Core cultivators back then on Burial Mound Mountain. To be able to stand out in the brutal selection of princes of the Great Xia Empire and rank 11th, his strength was probably no weaker than the Dark Queen's. Since Sai Qing treated Jiao Zhen and Yi Dan politely, their cultivations went without saying. A combined attack from the 3 of them would definitely be earth-shattering. They would not stop until they achieved their objective. They've come to deal with me, so I can beat them at their own game. I'll use my clone to probe them out. However, I'll have to wait for them to strike first and avoid the brunt of the attack. My clone is still too weak after all. If I can't summon my clone back with the water mirror's image in time and get killed by them, losing the water god seal, it won't be worth it. Sai Ching's wolf-like eyes kept sweeping across the ground, but he couldn't find any trace of North Moon. This made him even more excited, and the corners of his lips curled up. This North Moon is indeed as troublesome as the rumors say. Apart from duels, the game he loved the most in his life was hunting. Unfortunately, it was very difficult for him to find suitable prey with his current strength unless he went to a place of wilderness like the Mist Province for training. If it wasn't for the risk of being devoured by the prey, then hunting was just a meaningless slaughter. North Moon, on the other hand, had reignited his interest. The more cunning and ferocious the prey, the more interesting the hunt. North Moon, I will take your head with my own hands and make it my most precious collection. Jiozhen's face sank. Ever since he arrived in the Ruyi Commandery, he had begun making preparations to kill North Moon, from the innate abilities he used in every battle to the limits of his speed when he flapped his wings, to the methods he used in attack and defense, to the analysis of his personality and so on. Finally, he came up with a perfect hunting plan, but a problem arose from the very first step. He was unable to divine him at all, so he was unable to find his precise location. Although Mooncourt Lake seemed to be his dwelling, through his investigations, it was only the residence of a group of night roamers, and it was protected by many formations. It was very difficult for him to launch a surprise attack. At their realm of cultivation, defeating an opponent was easy, but killing them was far too difficult. If they could not kill him in a single strike, then there would be endless trouble in the future. They were instead better off maintaining the current situation. In the end, they had to rely on the great cauldron of the Marquis estate to observe the situation of the water being refined in real time, and only then did they find his location. However, he actually seemed to sense it, hiding at the final moment. "Old Jiao, what do we do now?" Dan asked Jiao through his soul sense. The impression he had left on Li Qingshan and the others was filled with a violent aura. North Moon bore a grudge against him for killing his disciple and stealing his wife. In particular, he had raised Yifeng single-handedly, where even his surname was derived from him. He was even closer to him than his own son. A blood feud like this was enough to drive a regular person mad and make them do everything in their power to seek revenge. But at a time like this, he actually behaved extraordinarily calmly. There was not the slightest restlessness in his eyes, and his body was relaxed and at ease. His usual behavior was not necessarily an excellent disguise. If anyone really treated him as a brute, they would definitely pay a heavy price. Wait. North Moon is rather arrogant. As long as we wait until he runs out of patience and provokes us first, we'll strike at the same time. All right. Sai Ching and Dan both nodded in agreement. The sun rose bit by bit. Both sides stood in a silent standoff when they could not see each other at all, waiting for the other to show an opening first. The sun rose to the highest point in the sky, scattering scorching sunlight on the ground. Water vapor rose into the air. Helicoverpa Rosa woke up afterwards and saw North Moon sitting to one side, staring straight ahead as if he was looking at an extremely distant place. "What are you doing?" "You're awake. The new Marquis of Ruyi is currently bringing his 2 lackeys to deal with my clone. I'm trying to compete with them in patience." Li Qingshan casually pulled Helicoverpa Rosa into his arms. His lust had already faded, but the feel was still very good. Helicoverpa Rosa was very unaccustomed to his gentle caresses. She sneered. "What, even you have times when you're afraid?" Smack. Li Qingshan slapped her plump bottom without holding back. "This isn't fear. This is temporary forbearance. Back then, didn't I still have to call you Maram Spider Queen and let you amuse me? Now, haven't I become your master? I've become your man. You won't be smug for too long." Helicoverpa Rosa's eyes were filled with viciousness. Her words seemed to be dripping with venom, enough to strike fear into people's hearts. Li Qingshan smiled gently and said in thought, "The new Marquis of Ruyi is a prince from the Dragon Province. He has a group of soul nascence cultivators standing behind him. On the other hand, I've fallen out with the Crown Prince of the Diamonds of the Green Province, Mo Yu. The Dragon King of the Sea probably won't support me. If I want to kill him, I don't just need the power to defeat him. I also need to be fearless of his background. Helicoverpa Rosa said maliciously, if you can kill him, I'll admit you're my man. Li Qingshan laughed aloud and pinched her chin. You can deny it all you want. All I want is your body anyway. I'm not interested in your heart, so you better keep it for yourself. Instead, I'd say your indignant yet powerless appearance is what I love the most. Afterwards, Helicoverpa Rosa revealed his favorite expression. Time passed bit by bit. Li Qingshan teased the Spider Queen, but he did not find it boring. He would not be afraid even if he were to waste time with his clone until the end of time. Suddenly, he came to a realization. This was the spirit turtle's method of battle. Although he was a coward, no one could do anything to him. As for him, he could use his long lifespan to destroy all of his enemies through time. The sun began to set in the west. Sai Ching said, looks like he knows how powerful we are, so he's unwilling to show himself. Yi Dan said, what do you think? Should we startle him? He's in this region anyway. Jiozhen said, let's retreat for now. We've already lost the opportunity. If we take action forcefully, we'll only alert him. What do you think, Your Highness? My father once told us that the most important quality in hunting isn't courage or intelligence, but patience. You're right, Your Highness. The three of them retreated silently again, as if they had never been there at all. However, they could not help but feel rather resentful that they had wasted a day for nothing. You've come uninvited and left without saying goodbye. Why don't you tell me about it? Soon after the three of them left, a voice rang out from behind them. That bastard North Moon flapped his wings, smiling at them with his arms crossed. Sai Ching said, I've long heard of the North Moon's great name. Now that I've tried it today, it really does live up to its name. Jiozhen and Yi Dan silently flanked him again. Then I'd advise you to stop trying it, just in case there's some misunderstanding. Or do you really have to fight to the death? Li Qingshan flapped his wings and retreated 5 kilometers. His smile remained the same, but he was extremely vigilant inside. He had already prepared the water mirror's image, ready to summon his clone the moment they struck. Jiozhen's heart skipped a beat. In the information he had gathered, the North Moon possessed a special characteristic, which was he rarely went out of his way to stir up trouble. He did not hold any hostility towards humans either, only devoting himself to cultivation. Only when others obstructed him and dealt with him first would he strike valiantly and kill them all. He played a decisive role in the end of the game of chess in the Clear River Prefecture. Otherwise, it would not have been difficult for him to uproot the 100 schools of thought and the various sects and clans with his own strength. However, he could endure it several times, even allowing the people of the academy to leave safely on Bronze Cauldron Mountain. Beneath his arrogant, unbridled appearance was a relatively cautious person who knew when to advance and when to retreat. This was his advantage, but it was not like he could not use it. We've come this time because we want to make friends with you. Heh, you humans sure have a special way of making friends. Li Qingshan sneered. I'm just confirming that you have the right. If you don't live up to your name, then you deserve to be killed. The strong will never make friends with the weak, Sai Ching said indifferently, vaguely understanding Jiozhen's intentions. What he said was not out of line, but it was reasonable and convincing. That's not bad, but aren't humans and diamonds irreconcilable? Jiozhen said, that's not the case. The founding emperor borrowed the power of the 10 demon kings to unite the world when he fell ill. Doesn't the White Hawk commander of the Rui Commandery, Jiyu Yangying, possess the bloodline of diamonds? As a result, whether you're an enemy or a friend has nothing to do with your identity or race, but with your common interests. If your interests clash, even if you're of the same race, or even brothers, you'll still have to fight to the death. Your Excellency should have already experienced this point. Li Qingshan smiled. That makes even more sense. However, I'd like to ask, where are our common interests? If only the headquarters were working with a tiger. Jiozhen said, with your wisdom, do you really think we'll be able to fool you? Common interests need to be found together. Getting along peacefully beats risking your life and carrying out vendettas, right? Chapter 628. In the past, The founding emperor obtained the power of Senior's hawk god and wolf god to establish his great cause. As a descendant of the imperial family, I'd like to emulate him a little and become allies with you. We'll rule over the Rui commandery together. You'll rule over the diamonds, and I'll rule over the humans. Isn't that perfect? Sai Ching made this promise, but the killing intent in his heart did not decrease in the slightest. Deception was only a part of hunting. When dealing with intelligent prey, one needed to use their intelligence even more. That's fantastic. Though, I want to refine the waters of the Rui commandery. North Moon's eyes lit up. He seemed very tempted, but he also seemed rather doubtful. You are free to refine the rivers and lakes of the Rui commandery. We will no longer obstruct you. Sai Ching said generously, but in his heart, he thought, I must obtain this water god seal of yours. Only by refining the mountains and water veins, and then gathering the wish power of all living beings, can I refine the real seal of mountains and rivers. Its power is so great that even nascent soul cultivators would not dare to be careless. Li Qingshan smiled and said, You are much more generous than Jiang Fu. Not bad, not bad. Jiozhen said, Why don't you come with us to the Marquis estate for a chat and discuss how to rule the Rui commandery together? What's so good about the Marquis's residence? Sai Ching said, Fine wine and delicacies, music and dance, rare treasures, there's nothing we don't have. Are there any beauties? So this is North Moon's hobby. You can choose any beauty you like. That's great, but I don't know if there are any beauties more beautiful than Begonia. That's right, I seem to have killed a few people 2 days ago. They said they were disciples of Yi Dan or something. That Yi Dan can't be you, right? Li Qingshan said with a smile, his gaze drifting to Yi Dan's face. Yi Dan showed no anger at all. Instead, he laughed aloud. Sect Master Qiu is obviously a rare beauty. We heroes think alike, but she's not the only beauties in the world. Once we get to the Marquis estate, let's sample the various beauties of the Rui commandery together. As for those few good-for-nothing disciples, so what if they were killed? I have to thank you for saving me from losing face elsewhere. Fellow Daoist Xie is indeed a forthright person. I like it. Li Qingshan praised aloud, but he thought inside, if you could speak like that in the past, would I even have to kill you? It's getting late. Let's go. Li Qingshan thought and shook his head. God, another day. I still have to continue refining the water veins and wait until I'm done. I still have to continue refining the water veins. All right, then I'll await your arrival at the Marquis's mansion. Sai Ching cupped his hands, and then flew up with Jiozhen and Yi Dan. Ching of the 3 clan of the clan, Li Qingshan, Dan and of Li, Qi, they, the Xie, of 3 of QS, Comagin of the clan, and of Dan, of Shen of Chen of Zhen, he, Jiao, Jiao, of Jiao, Dan Jiao, of with, Zhen, Li, Jiao, king of, Ji, Jiao, of Shen. Don't worry, no matter how cautious a person is, they will let down their guard after a long time. Before killing him, I can still make good use of him. I will. The 3 of them looked at each other and smiled. Right at this moment, Butler Zheng came in and reported, Your Highness, a Qi practitioner is here to see you. Qi practitioner? I won't see you. He said he had a big secret to give to Your Highness. Oh, then let him in. If he dares to make fun of me, wait. After a while, Butler Zheng came in with a young man who was trembling with fear. When he saw Sai Ching, he immediately knelt to the ground. This lowly one greets Your Highness. Sai Ching ignored him as well. She looked down at him from above. Steward Zheng said, If you have anything to say it quickly. Your Highness, please avenge my father. Who is your enemy? Sai Ching was a little displeased. The Scarlet Hawk commander of the Clear River Prefecture, Li Qingshan. The young man was utterly furious. He gritted his teeth and said, It's that Li Qingshan again. Didn't you say that you have a secret to tell me? Your Highness, please avenge me. Raise your head. Are you trying to negotiate with me? I wouldn't dare. It's just that this secret is extremely important. The young man made eye contact with Sai Ching, and his face paled. Say it. There's nothing to hide. It has to do with the painting tomb. The painting tomb. As it turned out, Chu Danqing's first senior brother had always been cautious. After he left, he told this secret to his most beloved son just in case, but he never thought he would really never return. Meanwhile, the news of Li Qingshan killing the three of them spread very quickly. This child was both hateful and afraid. Not only was Li Qingshan's cultivation powerful, but he also had Jiyu Yangying's support. He even possessed a recording stone as evidence. With his strength, not only was it impossible for him to avenge his father, but he was also constantly afraid that Li Qingshan would come and eliminate him. In the end, he made up his mind to offer this secret to Prince Sai Qing, who had grievances with Li Qingshan. All he wanted was to avenge his father and receive protection. Sai Qing listened to the whole story. In other words, you only know who grasped the secret of the painting tomb, and you heard it from your father. Whether this piece of information is true or not is questionable. It must be true. Believe me, Your Highness. I guarantee it on my head. Apart from you, does anyone else know about this? Absolutely not. Sai Qing patted his shoulder amiably. Don't worry, I will avenge your father and you. Li Qingshan left the cavern and arrived in Mooncourt Lake again. With a wave of his right hand, the water before him condensed into a mirror. A while later, his mirror clone emerged. Li Qingshan took back the water god seal and began to circulate the arts of the boundless ocean. After breaking through to the 6th layer, his dantian could hold even more spiritual energy, just like how he could hold even more water after expanding a pool. This required the consumption of a large number of medicinal pellets in order to cultivate. However, after reaching this realm, the requirements for medicinal pellets had also become higher. Low-grade medicinal pellets such as qi-gathering pellets were already harmful, but high-grade medicinal pellets were not easy to obtain. Unless it was someone with a background like Jiyu Yangying or Sai Qing, most cultivators would have to spend a large amount of time and effort to absorb and refine spiritual energy bit by bit in order to cultivate. Right now, however, Li Qingshan was using the power of countless rivers and lakes to cultivate, saving him a great deal of time and effort. Li Qingshan's eyes were tightly shut as he sat with his legs crossed. Specks of spiritual light shone from the water god seal, fusing into his body and seeping into his dantian. After being refined, it turned into surging waves of pure spiritual energy. The sun rose and the moon set, day and night alternated. Time flew by, and the water spiritual energy finally filled his entire dantian. It could no longer hold any more. Li Qingshan slowly opened his eyes. Although his foundation was still unstable and his mental cultivation was insufficient, in terms of spiritual energy alone, he had already reached the peak of foundation establishment. But in terms of spiritual power, he had already reached the peak of the foundation building realm and could almost see the door to the golden core realm. Chapter 629. The sun shone brightly in the clear sky. On a platform 100 feet high in the Marquis of Rui's estate, Sai Qing held a cup of alcohol in one hand and placed his other hand on the railing, gazing into the distance. One after another, the flying dragon ships hovered in the air. Streaks of light flew over from the horizon. The entrance to the Marquis's estate was packed with people. They were all cultivators from various parts of the Rui commandery. They had come to congratulate him on becoming the Marquis of Rui and to participate in or observe the upcoming exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures. Sai Qing turned around and let out a long laugh with his jackal-like voice. Thank you all for rushing over from various places. Sai Qing will drink first as a sign of respect. He downed the alcohol in his cup. A banquet had already been laid out on the platform. A group of cultivators sat there, consisting of both men and women, monks and laymen. Every single one of them possessed an extraordinary bearing. There were cultivators from the academy as well as cultivators from sects. There was only one standard for those who could sit there: golden core cultivators who had undergone the second heavenly tribulation. Jiyu Yangying was among them too. She raised her cup and smiled. Sai Bao ignored Sai Qing and sat down with her. She asked about Qian Rongji. How is she? Is she participating in the exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures this time? Everyone raised their cups and congratulated Sai Ching again. Only then did Jiyu Yangying say to Sai Bao, "Oh, her? She's cultivating right now." At this moment, Qian Rongji rowed a skiff in the waterside pavilion of listening wind, drifting through the sea of flowers. A gentle breeze blew by, and the sea of flowers rose and fell. The fragrance of flowers permeated the surroundings. It was like a paradise. However, her face did not ease up at all. She scanned through the sea of flowers as she cursed Jiyu Yangying furiously inside. All of this was because Jiyu Yangying had said before she left, "I want to eat lotus seed soup." Qian Rongji was forced to search through the sea of flowers. Originally, finding lotus flowers in such a vast expanse should have been an extremely simple matter, but this space remained in spring and summer the entire time, so the lotus flowers bloomed all the time. As for lotus seeds, they would only ripen in autumn and winter after the lotus flowers had withered. Moreover, this sea of flowers was both real and illusory. Sometimes, when he saw a lotus flower, he would stretch out his hand and touch nothing. He couldn't even fly in the sky and use his divine sense to explore. He could only slowly row the boat and search. She had been searching for a few hours and had not even collected a single lotus seed, but she could not give up just like that. She recalled how Jiyu Yangying hadn't taught her the slightest bit of the path of cultivation during her stay in the waterside pavilion of listening wind. Instead, she'd ordered her to do all sorts of chores. She couldn't even cultivate normally. It was as if they were intentionally making fun of her, causing her to be trapped here for the rest of her life as a slave and unable to soar in the world. In that case, she would have to think of a way to leave this place as soon as possible. However, Jiyu Yangying's final words dispelled this thought. "Your performance over the past few days has satisfied me. This will be the final test. If you can complete it, I will pass on to you the illustrations of Naraka's scripture. If you can't, I will expel you from the school. You can go wherever you want." Qian Rongji could only continue her search patiently. Her mind gradually calmed down, and the thick fragrance of flowers seemed to have seeped into her body. The hell snake fell into a deep slumber once more, no longer joyfully feasting on her pain. She truly did not feel pain anymore. It was not just the pain brought on by the hell snake, but also the anxiety, fury, jealousy, and hatred. All of them had been pacified. She had almost forgotten that living in this world was such a relaxing and joyful thing. She stood at the bow of the boat in a daze. When she looked back, the waterside pavilion of listening wind had already disappeared. She was completely lost in this sea of flowers. Her past memories came flooding back. Her mother was washing clothes nearby, exhorting her, "Be careful." She turned a deaf ear to her mother, staring at a small fish in the clear and shallow stream, pouncing on empty air. Her father walked along the ridge of fields, carrying the fish he had caught from the paddy fields. She skipped behind him. The boy next door had secretly given her some soft candy. Later on, he had even come to visit her, his face full of awkwardness and disappointment. Had these things really happened? Then why had she forgotten about them? She vaguely understood that they had a great connection to this sea of flowers, but were these memories real? Or perhaps they were just illusions created by this strange sea of flowers. She did not dare to be certain. However, the rims of her eyes became somewhat moist, and she felt a strange sourness in her heart. This feeling was not painful, but rather like tears of happiness. Although bitter, it was also sweet. In a daze, she saw a lotus flower in the distance wither at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, all that was left was a solitary lotus pod. Even the dark green stem had turned yellow and withered, as if it had used up all of its vitality in the long flowering period. Unable to support the weight of the lotus pod fell into the lake with a plop. Qian Rongji had no time to think about it. She jumped into the water to fish up the lotus pod. Because it was obscured by the endless lotus leaves, the lake was dark and gloomy. Moreover, it was unexpectedly deep. Flower stems stretched out from the pitch-black bottom of the lake, making it seem like an underwater forest. However, this could not obstruct her vision. She saw with her own eyes where the lotus pod had fallen. Like a swimming fish, she circled around the flower stems and arrived there to fish up the lotus pod. However, the moment her fingertips touched the mud, Her entire body trembled and her pupils dilated. Flower stalks burrowed out of the mud and quickly grew. The power was so great that her entire body was lifted up. She rose up and soon broke through the surface of the lake. Lotus flowers bloomed one after another. She suddenly understood. Sitting cross-legged at the bow of the boat, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath, allowing the fragrance of the flowers to completely permeate her lungs. Beside her, the lotus flowers began to wither. She allowed the lotus pods to fall into the deep lake water and stretch out from the mud. They bloomed once again, multiplying from 1 to 10, and from 10 to 100. They filled the surface of the lake and surrounded the boat. Layer upon layer, they completely drowned her. Among them, faint sobs could be heard, which then turned into hysterical cries. On the high platform, Jiyu Yangying's heart stirred. Her lips curled into a faint smile. At this moment, a gust of wind blew over the high platform, fluttering her clothes and long hair. All the cultivators present, including the monks who had become monks, could not help but be moved by her beauty. They secretly praised her. She truly was the daughter of the hawk god after all. Sai Qing said, "Yangying, I heard recently that your subordinate, Li Qingshan, has done something major again. He killed 3 foundation establishment cultivators of the School of Painting in a show of strength." Jiyu Yangying nodded. "I've heard that too, but it seems like the 3 of them set up an ambush beforehand to kill him, but they were too weak, so he killed them." Sai Qing said, "Then why don't we get him to explain everything? This is the Rui Commandery. As the Marquis of Rui, I can't just turn a blind eye to this." Jiyu Yangying blew on it. "All right. Afterwards," she said, "Li Qingshan, get over here. His Highness the Prince wishes to see you." Her voice was not very loud, but it drifted away with the wind, reaching the ears of every single cultivator. They all looked at one another. A while later, when Li Qingshan did not appear, Jiozhen said, "Looks like the 2 of you still aren't respected enough. Speaking of which, he's even bold enough to not come on a day like today. That's pretty disrespectful." Yidan said, "I think he knows he's committed a great crime, so he's fled to avoid punishment. Commander Jiyu, you better issue a warrant for his arrest." Chapter 630. Yidan's face changed. Li Qingshan. The cultivators on the ground all stared at the figure in the sky with various expressions. Caretaker Zheng flew up and stopped Li Qingshan. "Flying is forbidden in the sky above the Marquis estate. Didn't you hear that the Marquis has invited you?" Li Qingshan did not stop at all. "Then please land on the ground and walk to the soaring clouds terrace. Wait for him to be summoned." Caretaker Zheng's face was cold. He behaved like he was going by the book, leaving no room for negotiation. It was a stark contrast to his humble attitude when he received Jiyu Yangying that night. Before Li Qingshan could look back, Caretaker Zheng parted his hands, and yellow light blanketed Li Qingshan's head. He thought to himself, "I only showed you some respect for Jiyu Yangying that day, yet you're actually bold enough to look down on a mighty golden core cultivator like me. I'll show you what I'm capable of today." Apart from the cultivators of the Clear River Prefecture, most of the cultivators who had come to attend the ceremony below had heard of Li Qingshan's name. Seeing this, they all shook their heads inside. This Li Qingshan is far too arrogant. No matter how powerful he is, how can he be more powerful than a golden core cultivator? He's been slammed into the ground in front of so many people. He'll be utterly humiliated. Li Qingshan did not stop at all. The corner of his lips curled up, and he pushed forward with both hands. The huge wave surged, growing a foot taller with each inch it advanced. In the end, it turned into a tsunami over 30 meters tall and collided viciously with the yellow light. Boom! The tsunami surged and shattered, turning into specks of light that scattered. It was still rather difficult for a foundation establishment cultivator to fend off a golden core cultivator. However, Li Qingshan's objective was not to defeat Caretaker Zheng, nor did he plan on facing him head-on. The moment the 2 forces collided, he immediately pulled back his hand and stomped down with his feet. Waves surged. Caretaker Zheng shuddered. The force from the tsunami was unexpectedly great. The yellow light dimmed slightly, and his attack was stopped. A figure suddenly rose up, breaking free from the range of the yellow light. With a turn in the air, he shot towards the soaring clouds restaurant like an arrow. Not good. Steward Zheng abruptly turned around and waved his hand to slap Li Qingshan. Just now, he had underestimated Li Qingshan, but he had held back because of Jiyu Yangying. Now, he didn't dare to hold back anymore. If Li Qingshan really reached Flying Cloud Tower, he would lose a lot of face, so he used all his strength in this move. Li Qingshan glanced sideways as the yellow light whizzed towards him. From the ground, the yellow light seemed like a huge fly swatter, while Li Qingshan was the tiny fly. The cultivators of the Clear River Prefecture all cried out, "Dodge!" If one was hit, they would definitely be severely injured. If it was an ordinary Foundation Establishment cultivator, they might even be killed on the spot. A Golden Core cultivator had an overwhelming power over a Foundation Establishment cultivator. Li Qingshan turned around in the air and spread his hands, unleashing the vast ocean flow again. A region of turbulence formed in a radius of several meters, but the power within the yellow light was far too great. All of the turbulence collapsed wherever it passed by. It was unable to divert the enemy's power at all. Child's play. Caretaker Zheng sneered and used a little more force. With a bang, Li Qingshan was sent flying. What? Caretaker Zheng's expression changed immediately, as Li Qingshan had not been sent flying horizontally. Instead, he flew straight towards the Soaring Clouds restaurant with a smile on his face. Although he could not divert the power away and avoid harm, he could still divert it from the side to the front. Using this force, Li Qingshan's speed suddenly doubled. Caretaker Zheng was unable to catch up immediately. All he could do was watch as Li Qingshan flew towards the Soaring Clouds restaurant. Right when he was about to collide with the restaurant, his hands moved gently like willows in the spring, producing an extremely gentle force. He drifted upwards, leaping over the railing and sliding towards the center of the platform. Then, he turned around and stabilized himself, facing Jiyu Yangying and Sai Qing. He exhaled deeply and clasped his hands. Subordinate Li Qingshan greets Commander Jiyu and Your Highness. May I ask why you've summoned us so urgently? Cheers came from below the platform. The group of Golden Core cultivators did not say anything out of respect for Sai Qing, but they were secretly praising him in their hearts. What impressive moves! He achieved his goal despite being obstructed by a Golden Core cultivator, and it's rare for him to do so with such ease. No wonder Commander Jiyu trusts him so much at such a young age. Your Highness. Caretaker Zheng chased up to the balcony. His originally amiable face was now somewhat flustered and exasperated. Old Zheng, go and entertain the guest. Caretaker Zheng glared at Li Qingshan's back. Brat, don't be arrogant. I'll make you die a horrible death in this exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures. Jiyu Yangying smiled. His Highness has a few questions to ask you. Just answer them truthfully. Li Qingshan, your cultivation is progressing very quickly. Sai Qing studied Li Qingshan up and down. He was filled with indescribable surprise. How long had it been since they last met, yet he had already gone from mid-foundation establishment to late foundation establishment. If he had always been close to breaking through the bottleneck, then there would have been nothing strange about it. However, the issue was his aura had already reached the level of peak foundation establishment. Not only did this mean that he possessed extremely great talent and ability to comprehend, but it also meant that he had great support behind him. According to the information, he had not been accepted by any sect. As it seemed, Jiyu Yangying really did value this kid. However, that was not strange either. Even among the princes of the Dragon Province, reaching peak foundation establishment in his 20s was extraordinary. In a place like the Rui Commandery, he would definitely be an outstanding genius. As a result, he became even more determined to kill him. Otherwise, once he really underwent the second heavenly tribulation and reached Golden Core, it would be difficult to kill him. It's all thanks to Commander Gu's nurturing. I wonder when I'll be able to repay this great kindness. Li Qingshan bowed slightly towards Jiyu Yangying in gratitude. He had already learnt how to push everything onto Jiyu Yangying now. Jiyu Yangying smiled but said nothing. She knew he was reminding her. Oi, you still owe me money. Li Qingshan, Do you know why I've called you here? Sai Ching's voice suddenly sank, like the threatening growl of a jackal. The atmosphere on the soaring clouds terrace became tense as a result. I don't know, Li Qingshan said calmly. Have you killed anyone recently? Li Qingshan thought about it. I've killed 3. Even if the golden core cultivators present did not know who Li Qingshan had killed in the first place, they had asked one another about it during this time. Seeing how easily he answered, they all frowned slightly. The Green Province had been peaceful for several thousand years. The concept of peace had already been deeply rooted in everyone's hearts. Qi practitioners still tended to kill one another, but once they reached foundation establishment, they all cherished their lives a little more. Even conflicts between the academy and sects would rarely reach a point where they would have to fight to the death, let alone kill one another within the academy. If they ended up killing one another over a tiny bit of profit and conflict, the entire cultivation community would be thrown into chaos. The Green Province would become a barbaric land like the Mist Province. You worked with Chu Danqing and helped him murder his fellow disciples. You're a Hawkwolf guard who carried out the executions on behalf of the School of Legalism. Tell me, what kind of crime is that? I'll be honest, Your Highness. I really don't come from the School of Legalism, so I really don't know much about the laws of Great Shia. However, if someone wants to kill me, surely I can't just stand there and let them kill me. If you look at it, this should be called legitimate defense. Let me say one more thing. I killed all 3 of them. Chu Danqing didn't do anything the entire time. Li Qingshan told them everything that had happened. He fished out the recording stone from his 100 treasures pouch and played it, proving that he was telling the truth. Only then did everyone understand what had happened. They thought, if that really is the case, then the 3 of them really are looking to die. They deserve to be killed. However, even after being ambushed, he still managed to take on 3 of them alone. This Li Qingshan sure is vicious. Jiozhen said sinisterly, I know you're a novelist, and you're most skilled at making things up. Who knows if you didn't force them to talk after you captured them? It's not difficult to fake the voice in the recording stone. If you're out to pin a crime on someone, you can always find a pretext. If you insist on sticking to me like this, then there's nothing I can say. Li Qingshan said indifferently, as if he could not be bothered with arguing. With Jiyu Yangying here anyway, it was impossible for the 3 of them to take the blame for him with just a few words without any concrete evidence. Sai Bao smiled. Sai Ching, you've only killed 3 treacherous scoundrels who sold out their masters for glory. Is it worth it for you to go to war? Let's put this matter aside for now. Bang! Idan suddenly slammed the table. Then what crime do you deserve for working with that wretched demon, North Moon, to kill so many of my disciples? When the name North Moon was mentioned, the Golden Core cultivators all lurched inside. Whether it was his actions of refining all the water in the Rui Commandery on a large scale or his terrifying battle record of killing basically all the demon commanders in the Rui Commandery in one fell swoop, it made him the most famous and powerful demon in the Rui Commandery. Right now, the situation between the humans and diamonds was becoming more and more tense. North Moon was definitely a sharp sword hanging over the heads of all the cultivators in the Rui Commandery. Once a full-scale war erupted, he would behead everyone. There were not a lot of people present who were confident they could survive a direct clash with him either. To Golden Core cultivators with long lifespans and noble statuses, this was basically the worst possible outcome. His crimes were getting heavier and heavier. Li Qingshan replied with a question, May I ask how I ended up working with North Moon and killing so many of your esteemed disciples? Back then, I asked you what happened, and you actually dared to lie to me. Only afterwards did I get to the bottom of it. Tell me, the jade pendant in the possession of that bitch, Begonia, to report to North Moon had originally been snatched away by my disciple, Yifeng. Did you personally shatter it before summoning North Moon in the end? Even your disciple refused to believe the jade pendant was real. When we clashed, I accidentally shattered it. Who knew it would actually summon the Moon Devil? You're afraid to seek revenge from the Moon Devil, so you came to vent your anger on me. You're basically bullying the weak and fearing the strong. How unreasonable. I fought against diamonds in the Clear River Prefecture, risking who knows how many times to kill a few demon generals, Yet you suspect me of having connections with diamonds right now. How absurd. Chapter 631. Sai Ching said with a sunken face, Yang Ying, are you just going to let him run his mouth here? Jiyu Yang Ying had been watching the show with great interest, so she could not help but stand up when she heard that. Why must we dwell on such minor details on such a joyous occasion? Commander Jiyu, my disciples were brutally murdered by the Moon Devil. Is that just a minor detail? Hihi, it was a slip of the tongue. Jiyu Yang Ying said. The Moon Devil who brutally murdered your disciples is standing right in front of you, so why must you glare at me? I won't stop until I'm satisfied with the outcome. Dan's face was twisted. What do you want? Why don't you tell me? Li Qingshan knew what he had done upstairs was rather inappropriate. Now that Dan had a handle on him, he would never relent so easily. Even if Jiyu Yang Ying wanted to protect him, it would not be that easy. You can only atone for your sins by colluding with diamonds with your death. On this joyous occasion, I just happen to need your head as a blood sacrifice. Dan took a step forward. His aura was like that of an ancient ferocious beast. The golden core cultivators all found it hard to breathe. At this moment, a black line appeared on the horizon. The black line spread rapidly, and a swathe of dark clouds arrived, turning the clear skies into drizzling rain in a single moment. A scarlet figure pierced through the clouds, speeding over with a trail of wind and fire. Flying is not allowed in the sky above the Marquis estate. Caretaker Zheng flew over to receive him. He was filled with both surprise and fury. He had just been utterly humiliated, so he wanted to see which ignorant person dared to provoke him. Did they really think that the caretaker did not have a temper? However, when he saw the newcomer's appearance, his eyes suddenly narrowed. The Moon Devil. His scarlet hair fluttered in the wind, and his appearance was pitilessly handsome. He smiled wickedly, and the two words North Moon were engraved on the pair of horns on his head. Apart from the Moon Devil, who else could it be? Manager Zheng's bellyful of rage was immediately mostly extinguished, and for a moment, he didn't know if he should attack the celestial artifact in his hand. This moment of hesitation allowed North Moon to flash past him, and North Moon didn't even glance at him. North Moon, how dare you? Fellow Taoists, let's attack together and take down this monster. North Moon arrived on the soaring clouds terrace in a flash, and with a series of rustles, all the golden core cultivators stood up. Their bodies flickered with light of various colors as they drew their arcane artifacts, gazing at the striding North Moon cautiously. No one paid any more attention to Li Qingshan. Only Jiyu Yang Ying lowered her head and chuckled. Sai Bao asked curiously, Sister, what's wrong? Oh, nothing. Li Qingshan sent her a voice transmission. Instead of relying on others, it's better to rely on yourself. North Moon didn't look at the golden core cultivators on either side. From the moment he stepped onto the flying cloud platform, he had been staring straight at Sai Ching. He had a warm smile on his face as he walked to Sai Ching's side and wrapped his arm around his neck in a familiar manner. Little brother Sai Ching, I've come to congratulate you. Sai Ching's body stiffened, and he looked at Jiozhen. Now was the best time to kill North Moon. Jiozhen shook his head slightly. North Moon didn't use any methods to hide his aura, but the aura he was showing right now didn't seem very strong. He was clearly telling them on purpose that this wasn't his main body. Furthermore, he didn't even have 100 treasures pouch on him, let alone the water god seal. That was why he dared to be so fearless. If he attacked now, he would only be able to kill an insignificant clone and completely become enemies with North Moon. All his previous efforts would be in vain. Sai Ching took a deep breath and smiled. Fellow North Moon, you're here. Why are you being so polite? Aren't we allies? Of course I have to come and congratulate you on such a joyous occasion. Didn't you say a few days ago that you were going to invite me over? Calling me fellow Daoist North Moon is too unfamiliar. Just call me a you, and I'll call you a Ching. North Moon laughed aloud as he patted Sai Ching's shoulder. With the shrewdness that Sai Ching had developed from his struggles against the princes in the Dragon Province, the veins on his forehead bulged. The golden core cultivators all had strange expressions on their faces. They couldn't even use the magic treasures in their hands, and they didn't know if they should withdraw their protective spiritual light. They stood there awkwardly and thought to themselves, so Prince Sai-Ching is so familiar with the Moon Devil. This can also be considered as Prince Sai-Ching's extraordinary means and astonishing charm. With a swoosh, Jiyu Yangying opens her jade folding fan and covers the lower half of her face, but her eyes are full of smiles. Come, come, come. I've already written the congratulatory words. What do you think? North Moon put his arm around Sai-Ching's shoulder and made his way over to the terrace, pointing at the sky. Sai-Ching raised his head and saw a row of shining, golden words appear in the sky shrouded by dark clouds. This was the effect of sunlight seeping through the cracks in the clouds. The other golden core cultivators followed him out as well, all raising their heads. It was not just the soaring clouds terrace either. The cultivators from the various prefectures of the entire Rui commandery all adopted the same posture. As a matter of fact, all the people in the commandery city raised their heads as they watched this rare sight. The words on the cloud said, Prince Sai-Ching possesses boundless powers. He is accomplished in both literature and martial arts, and he has blessed the common people. For thousands of years, he will unite the world. There was even a dash at the bottom, which read, from the North Moon. Sai-Ching laughed aloud. Then thank you for your auspicious words, you. You're welcome. North Moon waved his hand at the sky, and the clouds rapidly closed up, producing another row of words. Long live the friendship between humans and diamonds. We want peace, not war. The cultivators all looked at one another. They felt like the Moon Devil's reputation was terrifying, but his train of thought aligned with theirs. Speaking of which, ever since the North Moon heavily injured the demon commanders that day, the diamonds of the Rui commandery had quietened down a lot. The Great War that was about to erupt actually settled down miraculously. If the North Moon could truly reach an alliance with the Marquis of Rui, Sai-Ching, then they could avoid many pointless wars. They all agreed with Sai-Ching a little more. Through the eyes of his mirror clone, Li Qingshan met Sai-Ching's gaze. He smiled inside, if you want to endure and deceive me, then I'll let you endure and deceive me to your heart's content. You'll have to accept my deep friendship whether you want to or not. Sai-Ching continued to smile, but he was furious inside. This damned wretched demon is clearly playing along with my own scheme. He's forcing me to admit that we're allies in front of everyone, but calm down. Now's not the time to turn against him. That's exactly what I'm thinking, you. We might be of a different race, but we're still fellow cultivators who walk the path of cultivation. Fellow cultivators are nothing. We hit it off the moment we met, so why don't we just become brothers here? Sai-Ching was surprised. What do you mean become brothers? You wretched demon, you can go die. What, you're not willing? Don't tell me you lied to me the other day. North Moon's face suddenly sank slightly. Of course not. However, as a prince, I need the imperial family's permission to become brothers with someone. North Moon's face immediately cleared up, and he began to laugh. I see. Though, as a forthright man, I don't care about these empty formalities. You just need to get that imperial family or whatever to agree to it sooner. My dear brother, I'm a little older than you, so I'll just be frank and call myself your foolish brother. Ha ha ha. The group returned to the soaring clouds terrace. North Moon released Sai-Ching's neck and made his way over to Jiyu Yangying. He leaned over and placed his hand on the table, saying lovingly, Yangying, you're here too. Jiyu Yangying smiled without saying anything. She said secretly, Li Qingshan, don't forget what you promise. TSK, how boring. North Moon straightened up and turned around. He asked, Adan, are you talking about beauties? Get them up here. We'll have a good look at them. Edan was taken aback before realizing that Adan was calling him. The beauties are coming right up. North Moon squeezed into a table with Sai-Ching without holding back. Suddenly, he frowned and pointed at Li Qingshan who stood in the middle. Who are you? Don't stand there like a pillar. Go away, go away. You look a little familiar. I saw you upstairs the other day, right? Are you Li Qingshan? That's right. Li Qingshan bowed slightly and thought to himself, is this a monologue or a crosstalk? North Moon said, what are you standing here for? With your cultivation, You don't have the right. Li Qingshan said, I was summoned by His Highness the Prince. He said that I colluded with diamonds upstairs the other day and killed a few of fellow Yidan's disciples. Everyone's gazes immediately gathered on Yidan. Just earlier, Li Qingshan's crime was still colluding with North Moon, but in the blink of an eye, North Moon had come to form an alliance with Sai Qing. If they were really talking about colluding with wretches, who was it that was colluding with wretches right now? Li Qingshan, shut your mouth. Yidan could only suffer in silence. He could not voice his bitterness. Something like that happened. Yidan, you still can't forget it. I was the one who killed him, so if you have anything to say, you can directly tell me. If you don't feel like venting, I'll let you punch me 3 times. North Moon raised an eyebrow and pulled open his clothes, revealing his bare chest. Ha ha ha, you've misunderstood. Why would I care about such a small matter? I just don't like the look of this brat. That's good. Let's have a toast, and let bygones be bygones. North Moon raised his wine cup and clinked it with Yidan's, downing it in one gulp. He then said rather impatiently to Li Qingshan, there's nothing else for you to do. Hurry up and leave. Right, Haitang said that she wants me to thank you. Silently, he said to Sai Qing, what a coincidence. I left in too much of a hurry today and didn't bring anything. Brother, what do you have? Just give him a couple of things and have him leave quickly. You're clearly afraid that we'll kill your clone, so you purposely didn't bring anything. Sai Qing ground his teeth in hatred, but he smiled. That's easy. He took out the black hoop from his Sumeru ring and passed it to North Moon. North Moon picked it up and fiddled around with it. He thought of something. This isn't an arcane artifact, but a demonic artifact. Although the demonic nature was hidden extremely well, it could not fool his senses as he practiced the demon suppression statuary. Sure enough, that bastard Sai Qing was up to no good. Demonic artifacts can only be used by demon folk. If regular cultivators refined them without any knowledge, it was very likely for the demonic nature to enter their bodies and cause them to suffer from qi deviation. Giving it to me right now is the best. North Moon casually tossed the black hoop to Li Qingshan. Take it. Li Qingshan said, I can't accept a reward without doing anything. I can't accept this. North Moon immediately became displeased. You're bold enough to turn down something I've given away. Don't tell me you're still dreaming. Chapter 632. Li Qingshan glanced back at the soaring clouds terrace before turning around again. The corner of his lips curled into a mysterious smile. It's a joyous occasion, so I'll let you properly celebrate. Qingshan, are you fine? Han Qiongji went up to receive him. I'm fine. His Highness has been very good to me. He even gave me something. Li Qingshan waved the black hoop in his hand with a smile. Han Qiongji revealed a strange expression. Li Qingshan said, let's go. I still have to maintain order. You better go to Prefect Liu's place quickly. Come with me later. The White Wolf Guards patrolled the surroundings in groups of 2. A woman in the uniform of a White Wolf Guard stood nearby, waiting for Han Qiongji. Seeing Li Qingshan look over, she nodded at him in greeting. Li Qingshan returned the gesture with a smile. You better go. Your friend is waiting. Before the soaring clouds terrace was a large square. It was divided into a total of 9 formations, led by the prefects of the various prefects. The Scarlet Hawk commanders and generals stood to the left and right, while each formation was divided into over a dozen different colors. Those were the attires of the disciples of the various schools. Coupled with the cultivators from other sects in the surroundings, there were over 10,000 people, but it did not seem crowded at all. This was the first time Li Qingshan had seen so many cultivators stand together. He could not help but sigh. It really is a grand gathering. He passed through the square and discovered that the Clear River Prefecture's formation was the smallest among the 9 prefectures. It was nowhere near as populous as the other prefectures, but due to the baptism of war, the disciples of the Clear River Prefecture possessed a different bearing and edge. Wherever he passed by, the place would fall silent. Everyone stopped chatting and focused their gazes on him. At first glance, he did not seem particularly striking. His bronze face still seemed very young, but due to the hardships he had gone through, he possessed a sense of steadiness beyond his age. However, his features were still distinct, making him seem resolute and almost unruly. He was tall and sturdy, and he walked with composure. His expression was not as arrogant as he was rumored to be. His head was slightly lowered as if he was in thought. But as his eyes wandered, everyone could feel that he did not take them seriously. He was like a fierce tiger quietly walking in the forest, with a natural contempt. The leaders of the various prefectures were rather worried. With this person present in the Clear River Prefecture, the final display of martial arts probably won't be very optimistic. This was especially so for the heads of the School of Novels. They were thinking hard about how to limit this person's power during the School of Novels martial arts exhibition. What the ordinary disciples thought was that a few years ago, he was just a nameless pawn without any background. If he could do something, it might not mean that they couldn't. This ignited their lofty ambitions. Cheongji, your Qingshan is almost at the peak of the foundation establishment realm, right? His cultivation speed is truly astonishing. I heard that at that time, Junior Marshal Sister Han was the one who took the initiative to pursue him. Your foresight is truly admirable. Do you have any wonderful methods to teach me? Recently, my family has also been forcing me to get married. They are clearly looking down on me. Ding Minute was troubled. After Han Cheongji became a White Wolf Guard, she had been the one to show her around, and the two of them had become good friends. She was also born in an aristocratic family. If she couldn't advance further in the cultivation world, she had the responsibility of breeding children for her family. How am I supposed to have any foresight? I just like him. Han Cheongji withdrew her gaze from Li Qingshan and smiled valiantly. Big sis Ding, you know my personality. If I fancy someone, I won't care about anything else. That's your good fortune. I really envy Qian Rongji. She's actually been accepted as a disciple by Commander Ji Yu. Commander values your Qingshan very much, so why don't I get him to beg Commander Ji Yu to accept you as a disciple as well? It's not like his teaching one or two anyway. I hate begging people the most, and I don't want him begging people for me either. What a stubborn fool. Li Qingshan arrived at the Clear River Prefecture's formation and nodded at Chu Danqing, expressing that he was fine. Afterwards, he stood beside Liu Changqing and waited quietly for the ceremony to begin. The others saw how he was in thought and in no mood to talk, so they were afraid to disturb him, which made him rather happy. He focused all of his attention on his clone. In response to North Moon's enthusiastic request, Sai Ching arranged for singers and dancers to perform. He had no interest in these things, but Jiang Fu had kept quite a lot of them in the Marquis estate. When he inherited the position of Marquis of Ruyi, he had taken over all of them, so he could just barely make up the numbers. North Moon continued to sit with Sai Ching, crossing his legs without the slightest care for his image. He casually picked up Sai Ching's cup of alcohol and drank it. He did not use his chopsticks, directly grabbing it with his hand. As he drank, he watched attentively. His gaze never left the beauties of the dancers as if he wanted to devour them in a single gulp. Although Sai Ching was displeased, from his behavior, exchanging glances with Zhou Zhen and Yi Dan, there was a sense of delight from his scheme succeeding. Whether they were humans or diamonds, they could be controlled as long as they had desires. Ji Yu Yangying smiled inside, this kid's acting like he's the real deal. Big sis, you said North Moon is impressive, but I don't think there's anything special about him. You better be careful that Sai Ching really pulls him over to his side and they work together against you. Sai Bao communicated with Ji Yu Yangying in some worry. I know what I'm doing. Hehe, big sis, all you need to do is use your beauty a little, and you'll be able to make North Moon change side. You're underestimating him too much. Yi Dan smiled at North Moon. What do you think of these women? Do any of them catch your eye? The women aren't bad, but the songs they sing are soft and weak. It makes me want to sleep. Oh, I didn't think you'd be proficient in music too. Then what kind of sound is strong? Don't tell me it's the roar of wild beasts. Sai Ching smiled. The cultivators could not help but smile. Even an uncivilized demon was bold enough to criticize the music of humans. He was truly asking to be humiliated. Although Moon Devil was very strong, they still harbored the natural superiority of humans, and only treated him as an extremely powerful wild beast. North Moon pretended not to understand Sai Ching's mockery, and leaped up from his seat. Speaking of which, that night, I refined the great river and looked up at the stars. I was in high spirits and sang a song. Today, I'll let you all broaden your horizons. He arrived beside the musicians in a flash. The musicians were all women, and they all cried out in surprise and scattered in all directions. He ignored them and picked up a zither. He casually fiddled with it, shook his head, and threw it at his feet. Then, he picked up a shung and blew on it a few times before throwing it to the side. The cultivators looked at each other, and secretly communicated with their divine senses. Is Moon Devil for real? Forget it, we'll just take it as watching a monkey show. North Moon's eyes glanced outside the window. Suddenly, his eyes lit up, and he flew out before flying back. He carried the big drum used for reporting from the city gate tower, and placed it on the ground with a bang. Then, he raised the drumsticks and began to beat them. Rapid drumbeats suddenly rang out. North Moon sang loudly. The great river flows eastward. The stars in the sky join the Big Dipper. Hee, join the Big Dipper. A bowl of wine for friends in life and death. When this shout came out, it reverberated through the clouds, and the sound traveled for 5 kilometers. Not only were Sai Ching and the others dumbfounded, even Jiyu Yangying felt like she was shocked. Chapter 633. On the square below the Soaring Clouds terrace, everyone stopped talking and raised their heads. This voice belongs to the Moon Devil. Afterwards, they looked at one another. They had no idea what had happened on the Soaring Clouds terrace. If a great battle had suddenly erupted on the Soaring Clouds terrace, it would have been easier for them to accept it. What was with him singing like this? Let's go just like that. You've got it, I've got it all. Hee, I've got it all. I've got it all. I've got it all. North Moon acted like no one else was around, striking the drum and singing. When he reached I've got it all, he found it to be extremely fitting. In his past life, he did not think much of it, but now that he sang it, he felt like he was bursting with heroism and high spirits. Originally, he had purposefully come to make trouble for Sai Ching's ceremony, but now, he was in high spirits. With a shake of his clothes, he bared his upper body and struck the drum loudly. His scarlet hair blazed like fire. Although the crowd felt that this singing was completely out of tune, it was closer to the tune of a northern folk song. It had a kind of free and unrestrained passion that broke the shackles. It was not unpleasant to the ears. Even if they were not used to this rough singing, they could not help but be taken aback by the aura of his body. Surrounded by enemies, he sang to his heart's content. His enemies were all worried, afraid to act rashly. Above and below the terrace, the entire cultivation community of the Rui Commandery listened attentively. How delightful was that? When I see injustice, I roar. When I need to strike, I strike. Charging through the 9 provinces in a flurry. When Li Qingshan sang the last word, there was a great thump, shattering the drum. He laughed aloud. Sai Bao nudged Jiyu Yangying with her elbow. This guy sure is something else. Sai Ching clenched his fists. This damned wretched demon. Li Qingshan tossed the drumsticks out the window. Bring some alcohol. I'll sing nunchaku for you again. Since you can't accept this song, I'll sing one that you can't accept even more. I don't care if you like it or if you like it. He had an urge to turn Sai Ching's ceremony into a solo concert. Although the crowd didn't know what nunchucks were, they all knew that they couldn't let him continue singing. They all dissuaded him. Singing this song is already an eye-opener for us. There's no need to sing anymore. I think it's about time. We can announce the start of the ceremony. Sai Ching also stood up, grabbed North Moon's wrist, and said in a low voice, I think it's enough. I'll announce the start of the celebration. Is that so? Since you said so, Ching, I'll perform for you next time, North Moon said, still not fully satisfied. He took the opportunity to hook his arm around Sai Ching's shoulder, and they looked like good brothers. This place of yours sure is a nice place. It's much better than my dwelling. The beauties are all fair and tender too. Sai, you have no idea. Night roamers are all pitch black. Liubois, Liusu, don't blame me. I'm just lulling the enemy. Seeing how close North Moon was, Sai Ching could not afford to be too cold. He cleared his throat. If you like it, you can always. I can order people to specially build a palace for you. Originally, he wanted to use the fine wine and delicacies of the Marquis estate to erode North Moon's willpower, but as soon as he thought about the consequences of North Moon staying behind, he changed his mind in a hurry. That'll be far too troublesome. Moreover, what's the point of me being alone? I'm willing to stay here and drink with you. Simon, let's go have a chat. Sai Ching believed he was fearless of death, but when he heard that, his heart skipped a beat. He was very afraid that he would not be able to hold back his killing intent, which would make all of his previous efforts go to waste. He silently warned himself, Sai Ching, you have to be patient. The most important aspect of hunting is patience. This prey sure is unexpectedly difficult to deal with. North Moon half pushed and half pulled Sai Ching to the balcony that faced the square. Jiyu Yangying arrived beside the two of them, and the golden core cultivators all stood up and followed behind the three of them. By now, the clouds in the sky had already dispersed. The sunlight shone down at a slanted angle, extremely resplendent. Everyone raised their heads and gazed at the three strongest people in the Rui commandery. More accurately, they were a human, a demon, and a half-human, half-demon. Sai Ching began his speech with his unique voice of a jackal. To his relief, North Moon did not interrupt him casually and embarrass him in front of so many people, or he really would have lost his temper. All he did was smile foolishly, wrapping his arm around his neck the entire time and sticking to him. Li Qingshan discovered that the speeches of the leaders of the world were all filled with clichés, expressing their gratitude for everyone's arrival. Afterwards, they would toss around idioms like working together or working together like they were free. In the end, they would announce the official beginning of the ceremony. Banners hung down from the 9 soaring dragon ships. They were the congratulatory speeches from the various prefectures. This bearing won't do at all. North Moon shook his head in disdain. It's all their kind intentions. It obviously can't compare to our friendship. The corner of Sai Ching's eye twitched. Everyone who came today has sent a congratulatory gift. Only a wretched demon like you didn't send anything at all. You even gave one of mine to that Li Qingshan. Afterwards, there was a grand performance similar to the opening ceremony. The banquet was moved to the balcony too. North Moon sat down with Sai Ching without any hesitation. Sai Ching forced a smile. You've come from afar. Go rest up. Get those beauties to serve you. I'm not tired. The performances here are quite interesting. Sai Ching gritted his teeth. First up will be the competition between the schools of miscellany. I'll get someone to accompany you. Didn't I tell you already? I don't have 100 treasures pouch with me. That's easy. If there's anything you like, feel free to buy it first. North Moon was furious. Am I the kind of person who takes advantage of my friends? Then, just treat it as me lending it to you. That's more like it. What about you? I'm staying here to watch over the place. Then forget it. I'll stay here to accompany you. Come, let's drink. You fucking Evildor, can't you get the hell away from me? Sai Ching roared in his heart. He helplessly raised his wine cup. That's fine too. The grand celebration continued all the way until dusk. Just now, it ended. Thousands of fireworks rose into the sky, exploding with a bang, transforming into thousands of different shapes and forms. They were far more colorful than the fireworks Li Qingshan had seen in his previous life. They complemented the sunset, creating a magnificent sight. This was naturally the work of the school of Moism. Li Qingshan and Han Qiongji stood side by side as they watched. Han Qiongji turned her head and watched as his face was reflected in a myriad of colors. It flickered between bright and dark, as if he had been smeared with colorful rouge and powder. Sometimes, he looked a little comical, and other times, he looked a little mysterious and even terrifying. Li Qingshan sensed her gaze. He turned his head and asked, "What are you thinking about?" "Nothing." Han Qiongji grabbed his hand. When the sunset completely disappeared from the west, the fireworks also became sparse. Sai Ching stood up on the soaring cloud platform and loudly announced the official start of the exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures. According to the usual practice, the first to compete would be the School of Miscellany. Li Qingshan turned his head around and discovered that the 9 miscellaneous goods stores had already formed a circle at some point in time. Chapter 635. The competition between the schools of miscellany was extremely interesting. It was not a battle of martial arts, but a competition to see who could sell the most items and earn the most spiritual stones. Not only would the school that emerged victorious receive a tremendous reward, but they would also gain an advantage in the transactions between the various prefectures. As a result, whenever the exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures came, the schools of miscellany would take out their trump cards to sell, and the prices would often be extremely discounted. The cultivators of the various schools and sects temporarily broke through the barriers between sects and territories, surging into the various stores and buying what they needed. Everyone was beaming with joy. It was a very lively scene. Apart from the 9 stores of miscellaneous goods, many cultivators used this opportunity to set up stalls and sell their own items. Many mechanisms and structures rose up loudly, and restaurants and tea houses lined up one after another. The empty square turned into a huge market in the blink of an eye, brightly lit. Fireworks would illuminate the night sky from time to time. The air was filled with a festive atmosphere. Li Qingshan understood the intentions of the exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures a little. It was a grand gathering for the entire cultivation community of the Rui Commandery to take part. It focused on communication, not a battle to the death between the various prefectures and clans. Li Qingshan did not have anything in particular that he wanted to buy, while Han Qiongji mostly just enjoyed strolling around with him. The two of them strolled through the stores leisurely, pointing at something new and interesting from time to time as they discussed it. In the eyes of the bystanders, they were obviously a loving couple. Li Qingshan suddenly let out a sound of surprise. He discovered a painting scroll. It was covered in ink, but it did not resemble calligraphy or painting. However, a wild aura permeated the entire scroll. It was very familiar. It was the cursive sword calligraphy. The cursive sword calligraphy was only a mid-grade spiritual artifact. It had been placed in an inconspicuous corner, with no one paying any attention to it. This was not strange. When Qi practitioners chose spiritual artifacts, they would definitely choose spiritual artifacts of the 5 elements that corresponded with their element first. Only then would they be able to wield them as they pleased, and their power would multiply. The cursive sword calligraphy was powerful, but it consumed an extremely great amount of true qi. The profound sword style it hid could not be comprehended by just anyone. It was definitely not the best choice for cultivators. Han Qiongji said, "This seems to be a set with the scroll in your hand." Not bad. Li Qingshan immediately called over the school of miscellany disciples and bought the cursive sword calligraphy. He was also interested. Let's go take a look at the other shops. According to his guesses, although the original cursive sword calligraphy had been scattered in all directions after shattering, it was basically impossible for it to have dispersed too far away. It probably could not have made it out of the Rui Commandery. Furthermore, the remnant scrolls were not actually suitable for ordinary cultivators. Even if they obtained them by chance, they would not particularly cherish them. They would most likely be willing to exchange them for a suitable spiritual artifact. As time passed, it was not surprising that they would eventually gather in the grocery store. If he took this opportunity to look around, he might be able to find something. Han Qiongji was fine with it, but Li Qingshan couldn't find any traces of the cursive sword calligraphy after running through all 9 stores. He couldn't help but scratch his head. "Did I make a mistake? Do you want me to help you think of something?" Han Qiongji asked. The Han family's connections spanned across the entire Rui Commandery. Li Qingshan shook his head. "There's no need. I'm just satisfying my interest in collecting. Right now, the cursive sword calligraphy in his possession was only an inferior arcane artifact. Even if he obtained another 3 or 5 scrolls, he would only be able to upgrade it to low grade at most, and he would have to trouble Chu Danqing." The two of them left the grocery store and made their way through the bustling streets, gazing at the scenery on both sides. To Li Qingshan, this was a rare moment of peace. However, he could not help but think of Little An again. Most of the peaceful times in his life had been spent with Brother Ox first, followed by Little An. He could not help but hold Han Qiongji's hand. Although he was ambitious, he treasured every moment of peace, as well as every person who could bring him peace. Li Qingshan suddenly frowned and pulled Han Qiongji into a small alley on the side. Qingshan, what's wrong? Han Qiongji asked. It's nothing. It's just that someone is following us, Li Qingshan explained. Although he was the focus of everyone's gazes as he walked on the street, there was only one gaze that kept wandering to his left and right, following him from a distance that was neither too close nor too far away. He looked at the entrance of the alley and said, "Fellow Daoist, don't be so sneaky. Come in and have a chat. Please don't misunderstand, Commander Li. I have no ill intentions. I just have some things that I want to discuss with you, but I haven't found the opportunity. Why don't I invite the two of you to the tea house next door for a drink?" A grey-clothed Qi practitioner walked swiftly into the alley. He looked to be in his 30s, and his appearance was very ordinary. Add to that his cultivation was at the 9th layer of Qi refining, and he was the kind of person that would be hard to spot in a crowd. If you have something to say, then hurry up and say it. Just now, Commander, have you bought a scroll of calligraphy? Can you sell it to me? Also, according to what I know, Commander has a similar scroll in your possession. I am willing to pay a high price for it. Li Qingshan was rather surprised. Originally, he thought Sai Qing was up to something again, but he never thought he had come for the cursive sword calligraphy. He took out the 2 scrolls of the cursive sword calligraphy and unfurled them with a swish. Are you talking about them? The grey-clothed man's eyes immediately lit up. His gaze moved back and forth between the 2 scrolls of the cursive sword calligraphy as if he was verifying their authenticity. Yes. May I ask if the commander is interested in selling them? You're a Qi practitioner, but you sure talk big. This scroll is an arcane artifact. Can you afford it? Li Qingshan sank into his thoughts. As it seemed, his guess was not wrong. He was not the only one who collected the cursive sword calligraphy. I don't have any other hobbies in my life, but I have a special fondness for calligraphy. If I come across something I like, I'll buy it even if I have to bankrupt myself. You can say that I come from an aristocratic clan, so I do have some wealth. As long as the commander is willing to sell it, there's always a way. What's your surname? Han Qiongji studied this person in doubt. There were actually not a lot of prominent aristocratic clans in the Rui commandery, and they were all connected to one another. In the past, when Han Angua was a great general, the various aristocratic clans would send their descendants to congratulate him on every festival. Of course, every single clan had many descendants, so it was impossible for her to recognize all of them. However, the aspect that left her doubtful the most was that this person's appearance was far too ordinary. He did not seem like a descendant of an aristocratic clan. My background is far too lowly. It's nowhere near as great as the Han family. Even if I tell you, you probably won't have heard of it, fellow Han. The cultivator in grey bowed slightly and played dumb before looking at Li Qingshan again. It's a pity that I don't want to sell it. Qiongji, let's go. Li Qingshan stowed the 2 scrolls of the cursive sword calligraphy away and called out to Han Qiongji before making his way out of the alleyway. Please wait, Commander. These 2 scrolls of calligraphy aren't of much use to you, so please feel free to name your price, the grey-clothed cultivator called out to Li Qingshan's back. Name your price? His tone was getting more and more arrogant. Li Qingshan's heart skipped a beat, but he did not stop walking. No matter what price you name, I won't sell it. Commander, you'll regret it in the future if you miss such a good opportunity. The grey-clothed cultivator was flustered and exasperated. These 2 scrolls of calligraphy were not as simple as a magic weapon and a spirit weapon to him. If he could not complete the mission, he would definitely be punished when he returned. Regret. Li Qingshan stopped in his tracks and suddenly turned back. He actually sensed a hint of threat in his words and found it rather unbelievable. A mere Qi practitioner dared to threaten him? The grey-clothed cultivator shuddered and took a few steps back. What are you trying to do? Even if we can't make a deal, we'll still be righteous. We won't regret it. If you want the calligraphy, go look elsewhere. Stop following us. Han Cheongji pulled Li Qingshan back to the main street. You've really changed quite a bit. People always say that a leopard cannot change its spots. Looks like that's not true after all, Li Qingshan said with a smile. In his memory, Han Cheongji was a young mistress with a fiery temper. Han Cheongji rolled her eyes. We're in the Marquis's manor now, so it's not convenient for me to act. I'm a White Wolf Guard, and I'm in charge of maintaining order. I'm not so narrow-minded that I'll yell and kill anyone who offends me in the slightest, Li Qingshan said with a smile. He glanced at the alleyway again, then held Han Cheongji's hand and blended into the crowd. Meanwhile, on the Soaring Clouds platform, Li Qingshan used his identity as the North Moon to tease Sai Qing a few more times. Sensing that Sai Qing's killing intent was growing stronger and stronger, he did not dare to continue, lest he really fell out with Sai Qing. That would be counterproductive. Thus, he casually said, I'm tired. Sai Qing perked up, as if he had heard a royal decree. Butler Zheng, quickly send a Yu to his quarters to rest. North Moon tugged on Sai Qing's sleeve. Let's go, a Qing. Let's continue drinking in his quarters. I still have to entertain my fellow Taoists. Another day, Sai Qing's expression stiffened, and he hurriedly waved his hand to refuse. All right then, I'll be leaving first. North Moon waved his hand, and followed Butler Zheng to a luxurious palace. The eaves were arched, and the beams were richly ornamented. It was like an immortal's palace. Welcome, Lord North Moon. A group of women knelt down in front of the palace. They wore the same style of floor-length dresses, and every one of them was beautiful. Their makeup was different, and they were all one in 1,000 beauties. Their temperaments were also excellent, and they were definitely not ordinary beauties. Who are they? North Moon saw that every one of them had aura refining on them. Although their cultivation levels were not very high, and most of them were only in the second or third layer of the aura refining realm, they were still cultivators, after all. Moreover, the woman in the lead had even opened up her sea of aura and reached the 6th layer of the aura refining realm. They're all maids in this palace, and they're here to serve you. Your luck with women is really enviable. Butler Zhang revealed a smile that all men understood. They're also cultivators. There's nowhere in the world that they can't go, so why do they have to do such a thing? North Moon was a little confused. If they had a cultivation level of the 1st or 2nd layer of the aura refining realm, they could do whatever they wanted in the mortal world. Why would they become maids? None of them have the aptitude to cultivate. They were selected from young and given medicinal pills to barely be able to cultivate their aura refining realm. In reality, they're all just maids, and they're sold to the Marquis's manor. They can't be considered real cultivators. I see. North Moon nodded. This Jiang Fu really had too much money to burn. To do such a boring thing, aristocrats were really extravagant. Chapter 636. Even if mortal women were born beautiful, if they didn't cultivate, then they would have many flaws, and their beauty would quickly age. Moreover, the cultivation techniques that these women cultivated were specially arranged by the Marquis estate. They only sought to maintain their beauty, improve their bearing and charm, and add some methods to serve men. However, this wasn't like what Li Qingshan thought. It wasn't for the sake of satisfying a moment's lust, it was for the sake of producing offspring. The children of cultivators and cultivators would basically possess natural talent in cultivation. So, for the sake of ensuring the bloodline of the clan, the great aristocratic families would prepare such a reserve. The concubines that the Han clan arranged for Han Thierry were mostly women like this. Moreover, this was an opportunity for these women to change their fates. Becoming a cultivator, even if it was a cultivator of the lowest level, would allow them to possess a healthier physique than mortals, a longer lifespan, more beautiful appearance, and enjoy a life of luxury that mortals were unable to imagine. Once they were able to give birth to a child with natural talent, their entire lives would be guaranteed. Steward Zheng first brought North Moon to tour around the palace. The decorations within the palace were extremely luxurious, and all sorts of facilities were available. There was even a wine cellar that stored a few hundred jars of fine wine. Then, they arrived at the rear hall, and they saw white smoke rising into the air. It was actually an open-air hot spring, and the walls of the spring were made from warm white jade. Moreover, the surrounding walls were painted with alluring murals of beautiful women. The women in the murals wore revealing clothes, had graceful postures, and frequently cast flirtatious glances at each other. Amidst the rising mist, it was dreamlike and illusory as if they were alive, and it was naturally the work of an artist. Moreover, those maidservants arrived at the side of the spring, making the dream become reality. Steward Zheng smiled and said, "Fellow Daoist North Moon, this is all His Highness' kind intentions. Please enjoy it, fellow Daoist North Moon. I'll be taking my leave first." North Moon smiled lightly. He removed his clothes and leaped into the spring, and then he immediately sat down cross-legged and entered into a meditative state. This caused those women to look at each other, and they didn't know what to do. When Sai Ching heard Steward Zheng's report, he slammed the table heavily, and then he let out a long sigh. This monster was able to rise in such a short period of time. As expected, it isn't something that can be shaken by wine and beauty. Dripping water wears through a stone, and a rope soars through a tree. "We can't be impatient," said Jiao Zhen as he waved his fan. "Not in a hurry. I think he's clearly using his doppelganger to toy with me today. Do I have to endure him forever? But it's not as if he's not showing his goodwill and probing. As time passes, we will eventually let down our guard. Right now, the most important thing is to refine the Azura field. Yes, as long as I refine the Azura field and find out where his main body is, let's see if he can still escape from me." Sai Ching spread his fingers and clenched them tightly. Actually, Sai Ching had overestimated the thoughts of North Moon, or rather, Li Qingshan. He wasn't someone who was infatuated with love, and he would drink whatever was given to him most of the time without holding back. If it was on a normal day, he would naturally accept all of this filial piety. But now that Han Qiongji was by his side, he would feel bad if he used his doppelganger to steal her. The competition between the schools of miscellany would continue for a few more days. Some cultivators were still tirelessly searching for the things they wanted, while others had already returned to their accommodations. With the vastness of the Marquis estate, accommodating these cultivators was not a problem at all. As the night deepened, the two of them fell asleep in each other's arms. Li Qingshan opened his eyes and slowly pulled his arm away from Han Qiongji's body. He knew that this kind of movement could not be hidden from the person next to him, so he leaned down and kissed her gently on the cheek. He said softly, "I'll be back very soon." Then, Li Qingshan withdrew his aura and hid his figure, merging into the night. Han Qiongji opened her eyes and resisted the urge to follow and take a look. "Qingshan, just what is your secret?" Li Qingshan wrinkled his nose. Among the many complicated auras, he found the one he wanted. It was the aura of the grey-clothed cultivator who wanted to buy his cursive sword calligraphy. Then, he followed an invisible trail and chased after it. It was not that he was so narrow-minded that he would hold a grudge and want to take revenge after being slightly offended. Instead, he recalled a small matter from a few years ago from today. It happened below the Green Vine Mountain, and it was also for the sake of the cursive sword calligraphy. He was hunted down by a masked man in black, who wanted to kill him. Was there some sort of connection between the two? Many guards of the Marquis estate and the Hawkwolf Guard patrolled the surroundings, not sparing a single corner. There were also many warning formations operating secretly, maintaining a tight security on the inside. Li Qingshan moved through the buildings like there was no one around. As a signature technique among water element techniques, the invisibility technique was extremely effective when used by Li Qingshan with his current cultivation and talent. Even without external items like the glazed mirror of invisibility or the illusory water sword of invisibility, he could still fool regular Foundation establishment cultivators. With the senses of the spirit turtle, avoiding these warning formations was not a problem at all. He arrived before a tall building, and the smell vanished into a room on the 5th floor. Li Qingshan arrived silently and listened carefully, but he heard nothing at all. He could not sense any aura either. Clearly, there had been a formation cast down to block out probing. Li Qingshan pursed his lips and mobilized his soul sense, condensing it into a single point and silently penetrating the formation. Like piercing through the paper window with a needle, he could clearly hear the voices of people, and it was not just a single person. This seemed simple, but it required an extremely powerful soul sense. He practiced the 9 transformations of the demonic and divine. The 4 powerful wills that belonged to the ox demon, tiger demon, spirit turtle, and phoenix filled his sea of consciousness, constantly clashing with one another. Water and fire, god and demon, had refined his soul sense to an extremely powerful level. Even regular golden core cultivators paled in comparison. There were a total of 7 people in the room. Apart from one foundation establishment cultivator, the others were all chi practitioners. Their attires were very ordinary, making it impossible to tell which sect they belonged to. It was as if they were purposefully keeping a low profile. The cultivator in grey knelt on the ground and begged the foundation establishment cultivator, "Sir," he turned me down flatly. "There's nothing I can do." Li Qingshan, you really are as arrogant as the rumors say. You really refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. The foundation establishment cultivator was a stern old man. He swung his sleeve viciously. Li Qingshan thought, why don't you take a look in the mirror and see what you're made of? You're already so old, yet you're only at mid-foundation establishment. Let alone golden core, you don't even have much hope in reaching late foundation establishment. Though, just what is this bastard relying on to make him so confident? The stern old man paced around with his hands behind his back. Niu Juxia seems to have vanished into thin air. He's nowhere to be found anymore. Even the whereabouts of the 2-3 Absolutes calligraphy are unknown. Li Qingshan must obtain those 2 scrolls in order to answer to that lord. You didn't complete your mission, so your punishment is unavoidable. Li Qingshan's heart shook. These guys were indeed connected. They seemed to be working for an even more powerful person and were collecting the 3 Absolutes calligraphy, which was also the so-called cursive sword calligraphy. That person was not only rich, but he was probably not weak either. This was why these guys were so arrogant, because they relied on their master's power. The 3 Absolutes calligraphy had been split into countless pieces. It was not something that chi practitioners could collect at all. Even foundation establishment cultivators probably did not have it. That lord might be one of the golden core cultivators he had met on the Flying Cloud platform today. However, he felt a little strange. It was just collecting a few spirit artifacts. Why was there a need to be so sneaky? Yes, they were probably afraid that if the price was raised, it would be harder to get them. Fear appeared on the cultivator in Gray's face. Wait, sir, I discovered something strange today. What is it? On Li Qingshan's artifact, the 3 Absolutes calligraphy, I feel that some of the strokes on it are very familiar. It's extremely similar to the scroll that junior brother Liu, who was killed by Niu Juxia, lost. Are you sure? The stern-faced old man's expression turned solemn. Although to outsiders, every 3 Absolutes calligraphy looked the same and they were all written vertically and horizontally, there were actually many differences between each scroll. They had been doing this for a long time, so they could distinguish between them. A chi practitioner at the side also said, speaking of which, this is indeed strange. The remnant scrolls of the 3 Absolutes calligraphy are basically spirit artifacts. Why would an artifact appear out of nowhere? Could it be that this Niu Juxia is related to Li Qingshan in some way? The stern-faced old man pondered for a moment. I'll report this to that lord and ask him to take action personally. I don't believe that we can't take care of a mere Li Qingshan. A sinister smile appeared on his face. Since you're not willing to let us do as we wish, don't blame us for cutting off your path of survival as a genius. The other chi practitioners also laughed. They were all itinerant cultivators and did not have much talent. No sect was willing to accept them, so they were gathered to work for the old man. They were instinctively jealous and disgusted of geniuses. Then come, a voice suddenly sounded in their ears at the same time. The door suddenly opened and then immediately closed, but there was no one in sight. There was only a slight breeze that swept through the room, as if the door had been blown open by this breeze. The stern-faced old man's hair stood on end as he felt a great life-threatening crisis. He retreated and was about to activate the defensive artifact on his body when he realized that he was still in the same place. Then, he rapidly fell down. He widened his eyes in disbelief, and only then did he feel the sharp pain from his neck. He did not know when his neck had been neatly severed. His body took a few steps back, but his head was left in midair. Looking at the other Qi practitioners, they were all frozen in place. Some even had blank expressions on their faces, not knowing what had happened. Li Qingshan used one of his innate abilities, the Tiger Demon's Breath. Against a Foundation Establishment cultivator and a group of Qi practitioners, he did not need to go through much trouble. He only needed to blow. After all, this was the Marquis's mansion. If he caused too much of a commotion and gave Sai Qing and the others something to use against him, it would not be good. Thus, he directly killed them in one move. Before the head fell to the ground, it was wrapped up by a gust of wind and sent into Li Qingshan's 100 treasures pouch along with the corpse. After confirming that there was no trace of the smell of blood, Li Qingshan put away the 700 treasures pouches and quietly left the room. Chapter 637. In the 100 treasure pouches of these unknown people, there were more than 10 Three Absolutes calligraphy fragments, greatly satisfying his desire to collect them. If he could reassemble these fragments, Li Qingshan originally wanted to return to Han Qiongji's side, but he immediately changed direction. Chu Danqing was meditating in his room when he heard 2 knocks on the door. He opened the door, but there was no one there. Li Qingshan's voice rang in his ears, "Come in and talk." The door closed again, and Li Qingshan's figure appeared. Chu Danqing asked curiously, "Qingshan, why aren't you accompanying Senior Marshal Sister Han? What are you doing here? I need your help with something." Li Qingshan went straight to the point and took out all the fragments of the Three Absolutes calligraphy. "Do you have Grandmaster Chu's skill to reassemble these scrolls?" Chu Danqing said, "So, where did you get them from? You don't need to worry about that." "All right, I'll tell you, I just stole them." Li Qingshan thought for a moment and felt that it was better to let Chu Danqing know the inside story, so he told him the gist of the matter. "Qingshan, you're truly daring to make a move in the Marquis's residence. Those people who dared to scheme against you are truly unlucky. So these scrolls are called Three Absolutes calligraphy. That's quite fitting, but since it involves a golden core cultivator, I'm afraid it'll be troublesome. Who cares? Can you repair them?" "Of course I can. Last time when my master repaired them for you, he said it. Unfortunately, my cultivation isn't high enough, or else it would be much easier to use the emerald blood of vermilion to repair these fragments." Chu Danqing's face was full of pride and confidence, mixed with some embarrassment. Chu Shidao had already researched the method to repair these fragments, so Chu Danqing knew the entire process, saving him the most trouble. Moreover, he was full of energy, so it was much easier for him to do this compared to Chu Shidao, who had one foot in the grave. With the help of the emerald blood of vermilion, he could be said to be the best candidate for this job. "That's good. Looks like I'll have to make you bleed this time. These paintings will be the reward." Li Qingshan took out the spoils from killing Chu Danqing's 3 senior martial brothers and sisters. Chu Danqing sternly said, "Qingshan, I can't accept these items. These paintings belong to you, the painter, so you can unleash their greatest power. You know that I hate owing people favors the most." Li Qingshan placed the paintings on the table without any explanation. "Being able to study the works of the 5 Absolutes Immortal will be of great help to my art. This is already the greatest reward I can offer." Chu Danqing refused to accept it no matter what. If Li Qingshan insisted on paying him, he would rather not do the job. Li Qingshan didn't like to be pestered. "All right then, I didn't expect you to be so stubborn." Chu Danqing smiled and said, "It's not because of you, Qingshan, that you're so persistent. Actually, I was thinking that one day, when my painting skills reach a certain level, I'll paint a painting just for you." Li Qingshan shook his head and smiled. "I'm not a beauty. What's there to paint? Painters love to paint beauties, but I want to paint the heroes of the world. Then, I'll build a hero's platform so that future generations can admire them." Chu Danqing's eyes shone. I believe that day will come. Li Qingshan smiled. Unfortunately, I'm not a hero. Li Qingshan turned invisible again and quietly returned to his residence. He went to Han Qiongji's side. She was lying on her side with her eyes closed. She seemed to be asleep. Li Qingshan lay beside her and gently embraced her from behind. He naturally covered her and whispered into her ear. What? Don't you want to ask where I went? You'll tell me if you want to, Han Qiongji said with her eyes closed. She didn't respond to his caress. Li Qingshan forcefully turned her around, and only then was she forced to open her eyes. She pursed her lips and said nothing. However, Li Qingshan clearly read her thoughts. I've already been so considerate of you. Are you still dissatisfied? Li Qingshan felt great pity for her. She had never been a delicate woman. After going through so many things, she had gained a sense of tenacity. Let me tell you. I just killed a few people, and then I went to find Chu Danqing. Smack. Han Qiongji knocked his hand away and sat up. Don't touch me. Tell me properly. I'm listening. Li Qingshan sat up as well and told her everything. He even did not hide the fact that he had killed the masked cultivator under the Green Vine Mountain as Niu Juxia. Niu Juxia. Han Qiongji murmured to herself. She did not have much of an impression of Niu Juxia, but just this fake identity was enough for her to think of many things. If she investigated it in detail, it would become even more thought-provoking. That's one of my secrets. It really was you who killed Zhuozhibua. Who told that old bastard to go too far? Han Qiongji let out a long sigh. Actually, I'd rather you tell me you have another woman outside. How I wish your secret was just that simple. Is that so? I have another woman outside. Before Li Qingshan had even finished speaking, Han Qiongji threw a slap at him. Li Qingshan grabbed her hand. Oi, isn't that what you wanted to hear? Bastard man, don't forget what you promised me in the past. You go back on your word. You're heartless. Didn't you say it was fine afterwards? Never. Who is that woman? Han Qiongji grabbed Li Qingshan's neck with both hands and bared her teeth like an angry female leopard. She glared at Li Qingshan fiercely. You changed your mind so quickly. Li Qingshan felt like he had been tricked. How stupid. For a woman, this was clearly the most intolerable thing. Forget it, I also know that I'm not a charming woman. If one day I get tired of it and want to find another woman, just tell me. Don't be so fussy. You're not like a man. I look down on you. Han Qiongji suddenly let go of him and lay down with her back facing him. I'm not a charming man either. If one day you get tired of it and want to find another man, just tell me. Don't be so fussy. You're too much like a woman. I look down on you. Li Qingshan said seriously. You said I'm not like a woman. Mph, I won't find another man. Being tricked once is enough. Then there's nothing I can do. However, according to my field observations, Qiongji, you're still very much like a woman. Li Qingshan smiled. Although he couldn't indulge himself wantonly and even had to be careful, there was a kind of happiness and joy in the mutual affection between them. Although he hated that he couldn't drink all the water in the world, to him, she was the most ordinary but also the most special existence. The sky was bright. Perhaps it was because Li Qingshan had done it too cleanly, but the disappearance of those cultivators did not attract any attention. Everyone's gazes were attracted by the competition of the School of Miscellany. The School of Miscellany would bring out new goods every day, and the value was getting higher and higher. The atmosphere of the exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures gradually heated up. In the empty room, a mass of darkness suddenly distorted and expanded, turning into a pitch-black figure that looked around. Chapter 638. Several days later, after a great auction involving 9 stores of miscellaneous goods, the competition between the schools of miscellany came to an end. However, due to the losses from the war, the Clear River Prefecture only ranked last in the end, which was within expectations. Afterwards came the competition between the schools of music. As graceful music rang out, the bustling market turned into a grand concert. The exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures proceeded in an orderly fashion. Li Qingshan and Han Qiongji were together day and night, inseparable as if they had returned to their passionate love of the past. Under Li Qingshan's intentional honesty, Han Qiongji learnt about his secret past bit by bit, which made her feel very sweet inside. Of course, she never mentioned the fact that he had another woman outside again. Finally, the competition between the schools of novels formally began. First, the regular disciples of the schools competed. They pushed their divine talisman of great creation to the limit, turning fake into real and illusions into reality, creating a myriad of attacks. The spectating cultivators could not help but sigh in amazement. Sure enough, the school of novels was unique for the founding emperor to name it as one of the 10 schools of the 9th rate. However, these competitions were only the appetizers. Once the competition between the disciples ended, it was time for the foundation establishment cultivators to take the stage. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Avoiding Liu Chuanfeng, the leaders of the schools of novels from the other 8 prefectures exchanged glances. They seemed to be constantly communicating with their soul sense. The first match, the Clear River Prefecture against the Lucheng Prefecture, under Liu Chuanfeng and Sun Fubai's encouraging gazes, Li Qingshan smiled at Han Qiongji and made his way onto the square, leading to a series of cheers. However, after waiting for a while, he did not see his opponent appear. He glanced around, and the disciples of the schools of novels from the various prefectures all shivered inside. No, this isn't fair. The leader of the school of novels from the Lucheng Prefecture, Wang Luocheng, called out. Originally, he was supposed to face Li Qingshan, but after personally witnessing Li Qingshan's clash with caretaker Zheng, he did not feel like he had any confidence in emerging victorious. Fortunately, they had already discussed the countermeasures to restrain Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan asked in surprise, "What's unfair about that?" Exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures. They were competing on the ultimate skills of the various clans. If you had a body full of magical artifacts, wouldn't you be suppressing others with your power? How can it reflect the methods of our school of novels? This is neglecting the essentials and focusing on trifles, turning the tables on the guest, so it's unfair. The other schools of novels disciples also agreed. That's right. This way, even if he won, he would only have one in terms of Dharma treasures. Any cultivator could win. What does it have to do with the school of novels? If you want to compete, then let's compete with our true strength. Liu Chuanfeng said angrily, "Wang Luocheng, don't spout nonsense. Wasn't it always like this in previous competitions? In the past, the novelists were all poor. It was already considered pretty good for them to be able to get their hands on an inferior magical artifact. Even if the situation had changed a lot, there was no clan head who could be armed to the teeth like Li Qingshan." Wang Luocheng shook his head like a rattledrum. The past is the past, the present is the past. The rules must be changed. If you don't agree, then let Marquis make the decision. The schools of novels disciples from the other prefectures all called out, "Let Marquis make the decision. Let Marquis make the decision." Liu Chuanfeng still wanted to argue. Li Qingshan waved his hand. "All right, then I won't use arcane artifacts." As he said that, he stowed away all the arcane artifacts on him. That should be fine, right? Even if Sai Qing found out about this, the kid wouldn't side with him. Did he even need arcane artifacts against a bunch of repulsive people like you? It's still unfair. Your cultivation is at late foundation establishment, which is the highest among us in the first place. You're skilled in water techniques too. If we fight, you can easily emerge victorious even without the divine talisman of great creation, which goes against the purpose of the exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures. Seeing how Li Qingshan agreed so readily, Wang Luocheng rejoiced slightly inside. He continued with his request. "That's for your arrogance. How dare you offend the Marquis? Aren't you at our mercy now?" The schools of novels disciples of the Clear River Prefecture were all furious. Since when were there battles between cultivators where techniques could not even be used? Li Qingshan said, "All right, then I won't use any techniques. It's not just techniques. Apart from techniques from the School of Novels, You can't use any other battle skills or techniques. All right. Li Qingshan agreed again. You seem to practice the arts of body practitioners. Li Qingshan smiled. Don't tell me you want me to fight you with my hands and feet tied up. I practice the arts of body practitioners, so my body is relatively tough too. Don't you want me to stab myself and become heavily injured first? Only then will it be fair. It led to a roar of laughter. Even the cultivators of the 100 schools from the other 8 prefectures found these requests to be rather unreasonable. Contempt filled their eyes as they felt pity for Li Qingshan. Why did someone like him join the School of Novels? The School of Novels was renowned for their sleaziness, and the vulgar storytelling technique was not Liu Chuanfeng's original creation either. In the various 100 schools of thought, it was not well received. As for the School of Novels of the Clear River Prefecture, it was mainly because of Li Qingshan that the schools of novels of the other prefectures had managed to pull themselves together. Although the schools of novels of the other prefectures had learnt the ways of management from the Cloud Wisp Association and increased their own strength, their status was still not that great. Some disciples of the School of Novels instead showed signs of developing the vulgar storytelling technique. They even emulated Li Qingshan's partnership with the School of Painting, hiring disciples of the School of Painting at a high price and inventing a divine skill like the Coptis serial painting. After all, only children like to read fairy tales, while this was something suitable for both young and old. Reading it once was not enough. They even had to keep it in secret and read it over and over again. When they got excited, they were tempted to substitute the main character and crawl into the book and have a go at it. Sure enough, they received a tremendous amount of power of belief, but their reputation obviously became even worse. If you're willing, then we obviously have no objections. Wang Luocheng shook his head, acting like he was invincible as long as he was shameless. After tasting the benefits of the Cloud Wisp Association, he could already see a vast path of cultivation opening up to him. In order to occupy a leading position in the Greater Cloud Wisp Association, he had to restrict this Li Qingshan to the point of death. Li Qingshan was amused by this. This bastard really did resemble Liu Chuanfeng in the past. After thinking about it, he said, "How about this? In order to save some time, the 8 of you can come at me together. I won't use arcane artifacts, techniques, or battle skills, but you can all use them. That should be fine, right?" The spectators were thrown into an uproar. These were all a part of a cultivator's strength. He had already underestimated his opponent slightly by not allowing his opponent to use them, yet he still wanted to take on the 8 of them alone. Wasn't his defeat certain? Although most of them had heard of Li Qingshan's name, they had only truly seen him fight in the air above the Marquis estate. He had only clashed with caretaker Zheng a few times, which was rather tricky. If it were not for the power of his arcane artifacts and his ingenious battle skills, it would have been impossible for him to achieve that. "Qingshan, you mustn't." Liu Chuanfeng even tried to stop him loudly. Li Qingshan turned a deaf ear to him, while Sun Fubai said, "Junior brother, Qingshan has his own plans. His decision isn't something you or I can change. Let's just wait and see." "Is that true?" Wang Luocheng's eyes lit up. Sai Qing, who watched from afar on the soaring clouds terrace, smiled scornfully. "Yangying, this subordinate of yours doesn't seem to be too smart." Jiyu Yangying said, "Actually, he's the same as you. He hates battles that have no suspense or difficulty. Do you think he can be mentioned in the same breath as me?" Sai Qing squinted his eyes. "I think his accomplishments in the future will definitely surpass yours. Of course, they'll probably surpass mine as well." Jiyu Yangying smiled. Probably not a lot of people understood better than her just what kind of situation he had started from and just what level he had reached. He could sense that he would definitely play a relatively important role on the stage of the 9 provinces in the future. He might even have the chance to stand side by side with the various kings. Even right now, a clone of his is enough to give you, a mighty prince, quite a headache. Such a high evaluation even made Sai Qing slightly moved. "Looks like you really think highly of this child. However, most geniuses in the world die young. Very soon, I'll kill him in the cradle with my own hands. A genius that dies young is not a genius." Returning to the field, Li Qingshan said proudly, "Of course. Let's not waste any more time. Come quickly." Wang Luocheng and the 7 other school leaders reached an agreement. "Let's take down this Li Qingshan first." Immediately, the 8 Foundation establishment cultivators stood up and drew their own spiritual or arcane artifacts, surrounding Li Qingshan tightly. They were all hostile, only lacking vicious grins to express their complacency. Boos rang out from the surroundings, but they turned a deaf ear to them. Shamelessness was not something that could be trained in a day. There were also people who were worried that such an unfair battle would cause Liu Chuanfeng to lose, so they shouted, "School leader Liu, don't forget our initial agreement." At this moment, Liu Chuanfeng could only choose to trust Li Qingshan completely. With a dark expression, he said, "I won't forget. Li Qingshan, I've heard of your name for a long time. Thank you for thinking of a way to revitalize our school of novels. However, there's a saying from the ancients, arrogance leads to madness. You might not realize it yourself, but this is what happens to mad people. I advise you to quickly wake up. No matter how strong you are, you're just a tiger with its claws and teeth pulled out. It's better for you to surrender obediently, lest you hurt the harmony of the school of novels." Wang Luocheng smiled, trying to use words to sway Li Qingshan's will. Li Qingshan also smiled. "It's fine. Even if I can't win, I can still make sure you can't." Wang Luocheng's expression changed slightly. If Li Qingshan really attacked him crazily, he would inevitably be injured. Then, he would be at a great disadvantage in the upcoming competition with the other prefectures. So that was what he had in mind. He couldn't help but feel a little regretful. Why did I stand out and say so much nonsense? He smiled shamefully and said, "Don't misunderstand. What happened just now was the result of everyone's discussion. It wasn't my decision alone, so you don't have to blame it all on me." "Is that so? I wonder who came up with such a brilliant plan. I'll have to thank him properly." Li Qingshan's gaze swept across the faces of the other 7 people. They either puffed out their chests and raised their heads to show their innocence, or their eyes flickered, not daring to meet Li Qingshan's eyes. They were all afraid that Li Qingshan would fight like a cornered beast and target them crazily. Dang! The strong man struck the gong, the sound reverberating for 10 li. Let the sparring begin. Li Qingshan's body leaned forward, and with a boom, 2 deep pits were blasted open under his feet. He flew up and pounced toward Wang Luocheng. He was like a ferocious tiger released from its cage, unstoppable. It was true that he didn't use any spells or battle techniques, but his killing intent, which had been honed through hundreds of battles, was faster than any spells or battle techniques. He charged toward Wang Luocheng. Chapter 639. Wang Luocheng had many hobbies in his life, such as walking dogs, cockfighting, drinking wine, and playing with women. He was good at many things, but not one of them was fighting. Intimidated by Li Qingshan's killing intent, his brain slowed down a little. He instinctively retreated, hoping that someone else could block him. However, the others didn't expect Li Qingshan to attack just like that, and with such momentum. Their reactions were also a little slow. After all, the school of novels wasn't known for being good at fighting. Because the power of will was hard to come by, they couldn't practice fighting like the other schools. They were more willing to transform into beauties and practice on the bed. Of course, some of them were really slow, while others wanted to let Li Qingshan and Wang Luocheng drag it out. In the end, both of them would be injured, and 2 competitors would be eliminated. As their eyes darted around, they realized that no one was a fool. Thus, the 8 of them surrounded and instantly turned into a one-on-one battle between Li Qingshan and Wang Luocheng. Wang Luocheng also realized that he had been betrayed. He cursed in his heart, "Those who write novels aren't good people." His stunned mind recovered a little, and he immediately activated the divine talisman of great creation, creating a huge door made of refined steel. It was a foot thick. At the same time, he quickly activated the protective spirit tool on him. As long as he could stop Li Qingshan for a moment, the others couldn't just stand by and watch. However, before Wang Luocheng could breathe a sigh of relief, there was a loud bang, and the huge door twisted inwards. Li Qingshan broke through it as if he had smashed through a paper door, his 5 fingers reaching out to grab Wang Luoqing's face. Only a few people saw clearly that in the instant Li Qingshan collided with the door, his hands pressed on it dozens of times in a complicated manner, destroying the structure of the door from its foundation. Wang Luoqing was shocked, and he let out a strange cry. A flying sword flew out of his sleeve, piercing toward Li Qingshan's chest. The sword shone with spiritual light, and it was also an artifact. Although it was the weakest inferior artifact, its power was not to be underestimated. Liu Chuanfeng couldn't help but stand up. His face was filled with anger and worry. Without a protective spell or artifact, how could he block the flying sword with just his own spirit force? However, Li Qingshan completely ignored the flying sword. He unleashed a vicious aura like he was determined to smash Wang Luoqing's head to pieces. Wang Luoqing was utterly shocked. He staggered backwards, but his mind was distracted. The glow on the flying sword immediately dimmed slightly, and it slowed down too. Li Qingshan smiled and flicked with his left hand. At the same time, his right hand turned into a fist and punched toward Wang Luoqing's chest. With a bang, the spiritual light scattered, and Wang Luoqing was sent flying while coughing up blood. His protective spiritual artifact had already been shattered. There was only a thin layer of protective spiritual light, so how could it block Li Qingshan's fist? Wang Luoqing was only in the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm, so he was 2 realms lower than Li Qingshan. His cultivation technique could not compare to the arts of the boundless ocean, not to mention the difference in body tempering. Li Qingshan didn't even use the ox demon's immense strength. In the end, he still held back 30% of his strength. Otherwise, it wouldn't be strange for him to have killed Wang Luoqing with a single punch. Wang Luoqing fell unconscious on the ground, and the medical disciples carried him away for treatment. Li Qingshan turned around and faced the remaining 7 people. He raised a finger and said, 1. Although they had gone through many battles of wits and courage, in the eyes of the bystanders, Li Qingshan had killed a Foundation Establishment cultivator with a single pounce. As expected of his reputation. Even without using an artifact or battle technique, he's still so ferocious. Thierry, is he really a disciple of the School of Novels? I think he's clearly a disciple of our School of the Military. The leader of the School of the Military of the Han Yong'an Prefecture was filled with surprise. The leaders of the other prefectures all stood to one side, surrounding Han Thierry. The Han family had held the position of great general for many years, so the disciples of the School of the Military in the Rui Commandery were all old subordinates. They were on good terms with one another. As a result, when they mentioned Li Qingshan, they all referred to him as son-in-law. Han Thierry said, he really should join the School of the Military. Fortunately, he's a disciple of the School of Novels. Otherwise, if he were representing the School of the Military, we could just directly forfeit. Han Thierry said, do you really think you can win right now? Kid, don't be cocky. We're going to test you this year and see whether you're a good father and a bad son. Everyone laughed aloud. Someone said, look, the son-in-law has struck again. Li Qingshan's body surged with dreamy, faint, blue light. He thought, this is the exhibition match of the School of Novels after all. If I don't use the divine talisman of great creation, they'll be dissatisfied even if I win. I might as well make them accept it wholeheartedly. He powered the divine talisman of great creation wholeheartedly. Slivers of power of belief were drawn out, gradually weaving into a humanoid figure, bones, blood vessels, and meridians. He had never powered the divine talisman of great creation so seriously before. Everyone, let's use our full strength together. The remaining 7 cultivators from the School of Novels all returned to their senses. Seeing how fierce Li Qingshan was, none of them dared to think about anything else anymore. If he really won against 8 of them alone, they would be utterly humiliated. If Li Qingshan knew what they were thinking, he would definitely be extremely surprised. You still know how to be shameless. 4 spiritual artifacts and 3 arcane artifacts charged towards Li Qingshan together. At the same time, they conjured blades, spears, swords, and halberds with the divine talisman of great creation, all of which lunged towards Li Qingshan. The attacks were numerous and powerful, making the spectators feel that the school of novels was not as useless as they were rumored to be. Li Qingshan soared into the air, drawing the water, fire, and spears towards the horizon. The figure he had painstakingly created had already taken shape. It was a young man in blue, dressed in a rustic manner. His face was also covered in dust, but his facial features were handsome and he exuded an air of righteousness. He cupped his fists and said, "I am Sengen Yo, and I would like to seek guidance from all of you, seniors." Li Qingshan scratched his head. His original intention was to draw the attacks away and let Sengen Yo take the chance to launch a sneak attack. He hadn't expected Sengen Yo to be so open and aboveboard, just like what was written in the books. It seemed that the characters conjured by the school of novels were no ordinary puppets. The higher the level of the divine talisman of great creation, the more intelligent the characters would be. Only by borrowing the coercive power of the divine talisman of great creation could they make them do things that went against their nature. No one had expected Li Qingshan to spend so much effort to conjure such a country bumpkin. One of the leaders of the school of novels had specially studied Li Qingshan's works, and he shouted, "Everyone, don't be careless, he is Zhong, nonsense, all of you, die." Sengen Yo roared, interrupting him. He raised his hands high and said, "Power of the Dragon Slayer, heavenly strike." His originally rustic and honest face was instantly beaming with joy, and his aura was blazing. The muscles all over his body bulged and tore through his clothes, fluttering about like butterflies. A huge silvery white sword appeared above his head, and a golden dragon coiled around the sword hilt. He swung it down with great force. The silvery white sword light lit up the heaven and earth, and the incomparably sharp sword chi whistled out, slashing toward the 7 people from the school of novels. Chapter 640. Sengen Yo was awe-inspiring, and his sword chi was like a rainbow. Wherever he went, the 7 cultivators all ran away. No one dared to block his blade. They all activated their divine talismans of great creation, conjuring all sorts of powerful figures and beasts to block him. However, they were all killed with a single strike of his sword. These fellows are really surprisingly weak. Li Qingshan could clearly feel that the Sengen Yo he had conjured, whether it was the sword technique or the way he fought, all of them had traces of his own understanding. Although words were unrestrained and could be used to write about how strong and intelligent a person was, the characters conjured were restricted by 2 factors. One was the amount of power of will, and the other was the author himself. No matter how mysterious the imagination was, it could not escape the limits of a person's thinking. If a novelist did not understand swordsmanship at all, then even if he wrote about a peerless swordsman, he would only be a swordsman idiot. No matter how real they looked, they were not real living beings. They were just projections of the novelist's own imagination. Just like how an omnipotent god could not create a rock that he could not lift, a novelist could not write a character that surpassed his thinking. They could be vivid and lifelike in the book, but once they were conjured using the divine talisman of great creation, their true form would be revealed. The 7 cultivators were facing such a problem. They lacked combat experience, so although the figures they conjured were all at the foundation establishment stage, their combat strength was terrible. Therefore, under the same situation where the divine talisman of great creation was activated, the Sengen Yo conjured by Li Qingshan had the upper hand even though it was 1 against 7. Li Qingshan did not want to waste any more time. He flew high into the sky, turned, and pounced down. The remaining 7 people did not even know the most basic coordination, let alone tacit understanding. They were scattered by Sengen Yo's charge. In Li Qingshan's eyes, they were full of openings. It was no different from challenging him one by one. Then, with a few punches and kicks, another 5 people were knocked out. 5. Li Qingshan stretched out his palm. He was about to finish off the remaining 2 in one go. "I don't want to fight anymore. I don't want to fight anymore." "You're good, okay?" The remaining 2 people actually admitted defeat. Amidst the booing, they directly left the martial arts arena. Li Qingshan waved his hand, and Sengen Yo dissipated like mist. Because he had not been killed yet, he did not expend much power of will. Victory for the exhibition match between the School of Novels and Li Qingshan of the Clear River Prefecture. It's done. Liu Chuanfeng swung his fist viciously. With that, the Cloud Wisp Association could expand across the entire Rui Commandery. Sun Fubai stroked his beard and smiled. Gasps of admiration burst out from the surroundings. Although Wang Luocheng and the other seven's performance was somewhat unbearable under Li Qingshan's attacks, they were still 8 foundation building cultivators after all, not 8 cabbages. Moreover, he defeated them without using any magical tools or magical techniques. Moreover, he did it so easily. It was truly inconceivable. Jiyu Yangying said to Sai Qing, "Looks like he didn't achieve his goal. Did you anticipate this outcome?" That's because his opponents are far too weak. Although they're all at foundation establishment, they're on completely different levels. Even if their numbers are doubled, the outcome won't change. Even if a tiger loses its claws and teeth, it can't be defeated by a flock of sheep. He really is a genius worth paying attention to. Sai Qing actually expressed his sincere admiration towards Li Qingshan. Jiyu Yangying furrowed her brows slightly before easing them up. As it seemed, Sai Qing had made up his mind to eliminate him. If he were not the North Moon, the matter really would be rather troublesome. Who would emerge victorious in the end in this fierce battle? She was not optimistic about Sai Qing's chances, but she also did not think that Li Qingshan would be able to deal with Sai Qing. At their level, it was easy to determine victory and defeat, but it was difficult to determine life and death. They would probably have to maintain the current situation for a very long time, until the North Moon revealed a flaw and was killed, or until they obtained the power to not fear the great Xia dynasty's revenge. At the side of the training grounds, Wang Luocheng had also woken up under the medical school's treatment. He sat at the side and regulated his breathing. Raising his head, he saw Liu Chuanfeng striding over. Pointing at them, he said in a pompous manner, "No matter how crafty you bunch of old fellows are, under my might, you still have to bow down to me. You're really asking for trouble. From today onwards, I'm the president of the Great Cloud Wisp Society. Who dares to defy me?" Although Li Qingshan had won, he felt an inexplicable sense of embarrassment at this moment. There was a saying that killing someone was just a matter of nodding one's head to the ground. If you were to force them so viciously, if these people were to get angry and go their separate ways with you, wouldn't all your efforts be for naught? However, to his surprise, Wang Luocheng immediately stood up and said with a smile, "Yes, yes, yes. We overestimated ourselves. Such petty tricks naturally can't do anything to junior brother Li. And senior brother Liu, when you take charge of the Cloud Wisp Society in the future, I hope that senior brother Liu will take good care of us." The other defeated heads of the schools of novels also came up to congratulate their president, Liu Chuanfeng. Li Qingshan was stunned. These people who wrote novels really did not have any integrity at all. What he did not know was that this was mainly due to his efforts. Just now, Wang Luocheng was still feeling a lingering fear after the exchange. How would he dare to use force again? He was the type of person who would not submit without a beating. Time passed in a hurry, and the matches of the exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures went by. The mechanisms of Moism, the Dharma of Buddhism, the divination of the school of Yin-Yang, and so on had all broadened everyone's horizons, allowing the cultivators of the sects to witness the heritage and strength of the 100 schools of thought. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. The final match was the grand exhibition match of the school of the military. Although everyone had used their full strength, it was more like a friendly match than a battle to the death. In the end, Han Thierry led the disciples of the school of the military to victory, which basically drew a perfect conclusion to the exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures this time. All they had to do was wait for Sai Qing to make his final speech, and the grand gathering of the cultivation community of the Rui Commandery would come to an end. Under everyone's gazes, Sai Qing stepped onto the soaring clouds terrace once again and said loudly, "The exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures this time have allowed me to witness the supreme skills of the fellow cultivators of the various prefectures and schools." After praising the cultivators of the various prefectures as usual, he explained the significance of the exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures this time. Li Qingshan found it boring, but Han Qiongji was reluctant to leave. She was tempted to let the exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures continue like this forever. She gazed at the soaring clouds terrace. The North Moon doesn't seem to be here anymore. She studied Li Qingshan's expression. During this period of time, the various past and secrets Li Qingshan had revealed had indeed made her think of many things. He's probably gone, Li Qingshan said. He did not have that much time to waste on Sai Qing. He had sent his clone off a long time ago, returning to refine the water system. If it were not for the sake of saving his main body, he would not have appeared at all. However, before he left, Sai Qing made a strange request. He wanted him to send some diamonds and night roamers to participate in the exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures, saying that he wanted to increase communication and ease their relationship. He also promised many benefits. Li Qingshan had no idea what Sai Qing was up to, but under the principle of I'll oppose whatever the enemy supports, he did not agree in the end. He could obtain these benefits from Jiyu Yangying anyway, and he did not have to worry about being tricked. There was really no need for him to waste his breath on Sai Qing. However, Li Qingshan had a vague feeling that the exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures this time would not end so easily. Sure enough, as Sai Qing went on, he suddenly changed the topic. The only pity is that the fellow cultivators of the various sects and schools can only watch from the sidelines. They can't take part. Even most of the cultivators of the various schools can't take part, so it'll be much less interesting. As a result, I want to add another event after the traditional exhibition matches. That way, all cultivators can take part and benefit from it. Sai Qing spread his arms and announced in high spirits with his wolf-like voice. There was a faint hint of excitement on his face. Li Qingshan could sense that his expression was very different from when he was spouting nonsense earlier. It definitely was not an act. His heart sank slightly. Here it comes. The cultivators below the platform all broke into a discussion. There's still a competition. Everyone can take part. There are so many people, so how are they supposed to compete? If it's one-on-one, who knows how long it'll take? Who cares? As long as there are benefits. Even the golden core cultivators on the soaring clouds terrace looked at one another. They had no idea what Sai Qing was planning. They all had different thoughts as they quietly waited for Sai Qing to announce the method of the final competition. After exchanging glances with Yi Dan and Jiao Zhen beside him, Sai Qing took out the dragon arena and tossed it into the main martial arts stadium below. He gave a rough introduction of the dragon arena first before announcing the rules of the final competition. Every single cultivator who was willing to take part could receive a special medal. According to their cultivation, the medals were split into various grades. Every single medal represented battle accomplishments. What the cultivators needed to do was steal the medals in the hands of others as much as possible. The time limit of the competition was 10 days in total. After 10 days, the dragon arena would reopen, and the cultivators would be able to exchange the medals in their hands for spiritual stones and other resources. A chaotic battle between 10,000 people. Li Qingshan understood Sai Qing's thoughts. As it turned out, this was the reason why he had made the North Moon send people. Just what was he trying to do? Was it just to satisfy his deviant interests? It probably wasn't that simple. And, would the cultivators of the various sects and schools really follow his wishes and take part in this chaotic battle? Immediately, a golden core cultivator objected, "Your Highness, a competition like this probably doesn't align with the peaceful exchanges that the exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures have always advocated." Even the golden core cultivators from the 100 schools of thought disagreed. Mighty cultivators fighting like GU insects. What kind of propriety is that? The other cultivators said nothing. Jiyu Yangying and Sai Bao exchanged glances. They could vaguely guess what Sai Qing was trying to do. He wanted to refine the dragon arena into an Azura field. The Azura field was similar to the Gate of Hungry Ghosts. It was a secret treasure that connected to the Azura realm of the 6 realms of Sazra. To open the Gate of Hungry Ghosts, he needed to choose a place where corpses accumulated like Burial Mound Mountain and cast down formations meticulously. Only then could it be opened. In order to refine an Azura field, one needed to open up a large battlefield, allowing powerful cultivators to fight with all their might. The berserk killing intent and battle intent would merge with the will of the Azura realm, and the Azura field would descend upon the world. Chapter 641. From the moment the Dragon Arena was built, it began to gather cultivators from everywhere, fighting and killing in there. Countless lives vanished in there, but the will to fight remained. Although the intensity of the battles was nowhere close to the level of the War of the 9 Provinces, later generations of cultivators could use secret techniques to store their killing and battle intent inside, constantly building it up. This process was relatively slow, but once it reached a certain level, it would change qualitatively, turning the Dragon Arena into an Azura field. The Dragon Arena was no longer just a large, expensive toy. Instead, it was an arcane treasure that could connect with the Azura realm and possessed various powers. This was the reason why the Imperial clan of the Dragon Province constantly built Dragon Arenas. All forms of entertainment were not just entertainment. The great general of the Green Province, Wang Wugang, possessed an Azura field like that. The most outstanding disciples of the school of the military of the Green Province had all been tempered in there before. Only the most tenacious warriors could pass through the trials. However, the method to refine an Azura field was a secret that could not be passed on to anyone. Only Jiyu Yangying and Sai Bao had a rough idea of it. As for how to operate it and what kind of formations and inscriptions to use, they had no idea at all. Big sis, this Sai Ching is so vicious. He wants to use the cultivation community of the entire Rui Commandery to fulfill his ambitions. Should we stop him? Sai Bao asked Jiyu Yangying secretly. Let's just wait and see, Jiyu Yangying said in thought. The Hawkwolf Guard possessed great authority, but they could only supervise the Marquis of Rui. They could not directly interfere with government affairs. If they tried to forcefully stop him, they would fall out with Sai Ching. Stopping someone from cultivating was equivalent to killing their parents. However, he could order the 100 schools of thought, but why would the cultivators of those sects listen to him? They would have to see what he did. Sai Ching said proudly, the world is in chaos right now, and war can break out at any moment. If we still follow the tradition of the past and carry out a competition that's no different from playing house, how are we supposed to deal with the chaos in the future? If you really don't want to take part, I won't stop you. However, you might as well take a look at the value of these medals first. Jiozhen took a step forward and waved his hand. A black curtain fell from the soaring clouds terrace like a waterfall. A few words were written on it, recording the value of the various medals in detail as well as the rules of the competition. The crowd below the soaring cloud platform was in an uproar. This was because the medals that ordinary Qi practitioners received were worth thousands of spirit stones. The higher one's cultivation base was, the more valuable the medal would be. There was no need for him to kill anyone. As long as he could keep the medal in his hand, it would be a considerable income. As for a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator like Li Qingshan, the medal he received was enough to be exchanged for a magic tool. No one would be able to refuse such a good deal. The Golden Core Realm cultivators glanced at each other and said in their hearts, this Sai Ching is really extravagant. He's taken out an enormous sum of 10 million spirit stones, various spirit artifacts, talismans, and countless medicinal pills in one go. He's simply like the child of wealth, and he's getting rich. Sai Ching said, in this competition, all the disciples, guards, and servants of my manor will be participating in it. If you're willing to take part, then collect a medal and prepare to enter the Dragon Arena. For the sake of fairness, everyone's position in the Dragon Arena is arbitrary. Do you have any objections? Since there were benefits to reap, and the reason was so dignified, who would be willing to offend Sai Ching? All of them expressed that they had no objections. There was a hubbub below the soaring cloud platform. The cultivators of the sects discussed among themselves. Senior brother, should we take part? Of course, I'll hide as soon as I go in. The Dragon Arena is very large. How useless. I want to win a few more medals and exchange them for a true spirit pill so I can break through to foundation establishment. How can we compare to you, first senior brother? Anyway, if you really can't win, just hand over your medal. It's not like you'll lose anything anyway. As a result, most of the cultivators signed up and collected their medals. As for the cultivators from the 100 schools of thought of the 9 prefectures, they obviously had to listen to the Marquis of Rui's orders. They had to take part, but they all seemed overflowing with interest. After a long period of peace, the peaceful atmosphere of the exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures naturally made most cultivators believe that this final competition was just a game Prince Sai-Ching had set up for everyone to take part in to win them over. Jiyu Yangying shook her head gently. She knew this was already something that had to happen. Sai-Ching had gone all out, taking out tremendous amounts of resources, gaining the recognition of the cultivators. One was willing to fight, while the other was willing to endure. Intense battles like this had always been a tradition of the Dragon Province. Even if it was reported to the imperial court, they would only praise Sai-Ching's actions, not rebuke him. Li Qingshan raised his head and carefully read the words on the black curtain. It recorded the mode of operation of the Dragon Arena, as well as a few simple rules. There were a total of 41 fields in the Dragon Arena, and all of them had been activated. Flying in any direction would allow one to enter another field. This was equivalent to several hundred kilometers across. It was quite a large area. However, in order to prevent some people from avoiding battle passively, a few fields would vanish every day, and the cultivators in them would be transported to a nearby field. After losing their medals, they would still have to wait 10 days for the competition to end before they could leave the Dragon Arena. This was to give the cultivators who had lost their medals the opportunity to obtain other medals. Everything seemed very reasonable, but Li Qingshan's brows gradually furrowed. He could vaguely smell the heavy scent of blood. Sai-Ching must want to use this opportunity to finish me off. They've sent out all of their disciples and followers. There are no fewer than 20 Foundation Establishment cultivators, and they've definitely prepared many powerful techniques to deal a fatal blow to me, Han Qiongji said. Qingshan, you have to be careful. Chapter 642. The wind and snow assaulted his face, and Li Qingshan appeared on a frozen mountain out of nowhere. Snow covered everything as far as the eye could see, drifting down like feathers. The mountain happened to be the very center of the battlefield, so it had an extremely open field of vision. Li Qingshan gazed at the surroundings and saw black specks appear on the snowy ground in the distance. There were around 200 people, and there were a few Foundation Establishment cultivators among them. Although they had all concealed their auras, they could not fool Li Qingshan's senses. However, he did not recognize any of them. They are spread out even more densely than I imagined. An area of several dozen kilometers was indeed an extremely vast area for mortals, but for cultivators, it didn't seem that big. Even Qi practitioners would take less than half a day to explore the area, let alone Foundation Establishment cultivators. Had it been a chaotic battle right from the beginning? As Li Qingshan observed, the Foundation Establishment cultivators sensed his existence too. They all raised their heads and gazed over. When their gazes pierced through the wind and snow and saw the familiar figure, their expressions all changed. Li Qingshan. Afterwards, they all took off into the air without the slightest hesitation, flying off in all directions. They were afraid that he would catch up to them and take their medals if they were even half a step too slow. The vision of Qi practitioners was not as good, and they lacked sharp senses. Under the cover of the wind and snow, they could only see a few kilometers away at most. The Foundation Establishment cultivators flew with streaks of light, which caused some panic. However, when they saw how the streaks of light did not fly towards them, they eased up again. Many Qi practitioners took out the medals in their hands, and their eyes shone with eagerness. As long as they could keep the medals for 10 days, everything would be fine. If they were lucky, they might even be able to collect a few more. The Qi warriors with relatively high cultivation bases began to quietly approach the weaker auras. Li Qingshan stood on the top of the mountain. He had no intentions of chasing after anyone. He was not particularly interested in collecting medals. His primary objective this time was to deal with the vengeful attacks from the disciples and followers of Sai-Ching's trio. He took out a glass ball that resembled a compass. The bright red arrow pointed in a certain direction steadily. This was a communication item that Liu Changqing had given them. All the cultivators from the 100 schools of thought in the Clear River Prefecture had one, and they were all connected to Liu Changqing. This was the plan they had decided on right from the beginning. After everyone entered the dragon arena, they would gather together as quickly as possible so that they could gain an advantage first and avoid fighting on their own and being defeated one by one. With Li Qingshan's flying speed, it wouldn't take long for him to reach the assembly point. Being with them would undoubtedly be a great help. But after some consideration, he put away the glass ball. He had no doubt that his current position had already been betrayed. Once the other party gathered enough strength, they would attack without hesitation. Then, it would be a situation where they would fight to the death. In fact, he was still a little worried that once he met up with Liu Changqing and the others, they would have some misgivings. It was better to deal with his own problems by himself. Let's see if you're going to kill me, or if I'm going to kill off all your disciples and grand disciples. Sai Qing's voice suddenly rang out from the sky. Thank you all for participating. In order for you to unleash your full strength, there won't be anyone monitoring your movements. You're welcome to use everything you have to obtain medals and other spoils of war to ensure your final victory. What I want to say here is that not everyone can live past 10 days, and the dead and the weak are not worthy of sympathy. Only the living and the strong can survive. For the sake of this path of cultivation, do your best and kill. Without a doubt, this set the tone for this chaotic battle, casting a shadow over everyone's hearts. Even the naive optimist suddenly felt that this competition was probably not as simple as it seemed. In other words, no matter who kills who, it's allowed by the rules. Li Qingshan smiled in disdain towards this statement that was filled with malice. He sat down on the top of the mountain and channeled his soul sense into the three absolutes calligraphy in his hand, beginning to refine it. This was a stone forest filled with grotesque rocks. It contained the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, forming a natural maze formation. A faint white mist floated in it, making those grotesque rocks look like ferocious ghosts and beasts. If a mortal were to enter it, it would be difficult for them to walk out even if they spent their entire lives. It originally existed on the border between the Dragon Province and the Harmony Province. Sai Qing had gathered it and placed it in the Dragon Arena, and after being reinforced by a formation master, it became a special battlefield. A young disciple of the school of Yin-Yang currently held a compass, searching for a way out. He was not flustered at all. Instead, he smiled confidently. Apart from being skilled in divination, the school of Yin-Yang was also rather skilled in destroying formations, and he happened to be one of the best. Even the heavens are helping me. I can attack or retreat here. As long as I grasp the circulation pattern of this formation, I can use the terrain to my advantage. If my attack fails, I can retreat into the formation. Even foundation establishment cultivators can't do anything to me if they don't understand the mysteries of this formation. Right as he thought that, a black shadow suddenly rushed over. He dodged in a hurry, but it was already too late. The black shadow brushed past him, and when he turned around, all he saw was that the black shadow had already vanished into the forest of rocks. He was still shaken. He was not even certain whether it was a person or not. If it was a person, the black shadow was just far too small. He took another step forward before suddenly collapsing on the ground. He felt a sharp pain from his waist. His entire body had been snapped in half, cleaved in half while he was still alive. His organs flowed out with blood. Ah! In his fright, he let out a series of earth-shaking shrieks, but they were absorbed by the forest of rocks, unable to travel too far away. He finally calmed down after much difficulty. Before he could even think about whether it was the black shadow's doing, he went to retrieve some healing pills in a hurry. Suddenly, he discovered that the 100 treasures pouch that should have been hanging on his waist had vanished. His heart immediately sank. With his cultivation at the 9th layer and not a disciple of the School of Medicine, it was impossible for him to recover from an injury like that on his own. Moreover, there was a strange power attached to the horrific wound on his waist. It had all died the moment it was severed, making it difficult to heal. Save me. I want to get out. Naturally, there was no response. If he wanted to leave this place, he would have to wait for 10 days. He could only watch helplessly as his blood flowed and soaked the wet soil. He waited in pain for death to come. In his despair, He began to scream again. He did not understand why the black shadow wanted to kill him. If it wanted the medal, couldn't it have just given it to him? He suddenly recalled Sai Ching's words, only the strong could survive. That black shadow shuttled through the forest of rocks as if he was in his own backyard. It was the dwarf who had been one of the fighters that night at the manor's banquet. The expression on his face looked as if he could crush an ant. He should have won the battle for sure, but he ended up admitting defeat, directly leading to the final battle. Li Qingshan had chosen a favorable location, which was considered the key to his defeat. Because of this, he was severely punished by Sai Ching. His heart was simmering with anger, so his attacks were especially vicious. He quickly arrived at the center of the forest of rocks. Several people were already waiting there. Every one of them was a foundation building cultivator, and their bodies were suffused with a faint killing intent. The leader was the scarred man who was wielding the high-grade magic artifact, the earth-shattering hammer of the 8 directions. The dwarf asked, "How's the prey?" "He's still on the snowy mountain. He hasn't moved." The scarred man's eyes seemed to pierce through space, allowing him to see where Li Qingshan was. As the master of the Dragon Arena, it was all too easy for Sai Ching to cheat. They had 3 missions this time. The first was to incite the cultivators into fighting one another, the second was to collect as many medals as possible, and the last was to kill Li Qingshan. The first 2 missions were relatively easy to complete, but the last mission was the most troublesome. Are they going to use him as a target to gather? No, the cultivators of the Clear River Prefecture haven't approached him. They've gathered around someone else. He's the only one there, as if he's waiting for us. Waiting for us. We have 19 Foundation establishment cultivators. Doesn't he know? It's probably because he knows that he's remaining there, wanting to finish us off alone. It's just like what your highness has guessed. This arrogant bastard. The scarred man swung the earth-shattering hammer of the 8 directions viciously and struck the ground with a boom. The ground shook and fierce winds kicked up. He's probably treating us like the trash from the school of novels. A cold light flashed through the dwarf's eyes. He had witnessed Li Qingshan's battle against 8 people alone, but he did not find it impressive at all. Those 8 pieces of trash who did not know how to fight or kill were enough for him to slaughter them all alone. He's underestimating us? That's for the best. I'll definitely smash him to a pulp. When do we set off? When we gather everyone. That's His Highness's orders. No one dared to disobey Sai Ching's orders. They waited in the forest of stone, ready to gather everyone and kill Li Qingshan. On the other hand, the hundreds of Qi warriors under Sai Ching's command with relatively weaker cultivation bases had already joined the chaotic battle, stirring up the water violently. Hua Chenglu raised her head and gazed around, but she could not see the sky. The layers of leaves completely obscured the light. Chapter 643. You want to rob me? Hua Chenglu's frown deepened. The gloomy, moist jungle suddenly became filled with killing intent. The tangled roots and the hanging aerial roots all came alive like snakes. He was a wood spirit cultivator. He smiled. Who knows whether you're hiding a medal or not? I've only just entered, so where did a second medal come from? Hua Chenglu was furious. She felt that something was amiss with the situation. If he were a regular cultivator, he would not have bothered her anymore after obtaining a medal. Just in case, I want to check. If you don't agree to it, I'll take action personally. Of course, I'll also take action on you. The cultivator in black licked his lips and smiled maliciously. Go die. Hua Chenglu took out a scarlet talisman, which turned into a surging streak of fire and rushed towards the man in black. The vines and roots let out the sound of burning as they all retreated. Boom. A streak of fire burst through the canopy of leaves, blooming like a flower of fire in the endless sea of trees. After saying that, Sai Ching directly waved his hand, and the images displaying the situation in the Dragon Arena vanished. The Dragon Arena had completely become a sealed box. Your Highness, how can you say that? Aren't you trying to make the cultivation community of our Rui Commandery turn on one another? On the Soaring Clouds terrace, an old man in purple clothes was surprised and furious, questioning Sai Ching loudly. The expressions of the other golden core cultivators all changed too. They were even more confused. Just what benefits did Sai Ching gain from doing this? It was not just the regular cultivators. They had never imagined that danger might exist in the dragon arena. Even these golden core cultivators were rather taken aback. A battle like this would without a doubt drastically reduce the strength of the cultivation community of the Rui Commandery, and Sai Ching would lose all prestige. He would even have to pay a tremendous amount of resources. There was basically no benefit to it at all. Without understanding the method of refining the Azura field, probably no one could guess Sai Ching's thoughts no matter how clever they were, much less imagine he would be so ruthless. Originally, under the circumstances where they could see what was happening in the dragon arena, the cultivators definitely had to hold back a little. Otherwise, even if the rules allowed it, they would come off as overly vicious. If they accidentally fell out with a certain clan or sect, there would be endless trouble in the future. Their surveillance was an invisible restraint, preventing the situation from spiraling out of control. Once they lost this surveillance, it would be very easy for the spars between cultivators to devolve into a bloody slaughter. This was not something anyone wanted to see, except for one person. Sai Ching slowly turned around, a surprised smile on his face as he said, "What a bunch of trash." Feigning civility with North Moon had already exhausted his patience a long time ago. Now that he had achieved his objective, he immediately revealed his original viciousness. Right from the beginning, he had never planned on properly managing the Rui Commandery like Jiang Fu, treating it as a foundation that could be passed down to his descendants. Instead, he wanted to make use of all the resources in the Rui Commandery as much as possible to increase his own strength. He was even willing to kill the goose that laid the golden eggs. To put it bluntly, in the world of cultivators, personal strength was still respected. Even though the so-called powers had their value, absolute strength was capable of completely disregarding powers. If he killed all of the golden core, he could do, Ching, and, the saint, with, and he, exclamation point. What did you say? Cultivators who were able to cultivate to the golden core realm were all extraordinarily talented. To reach this step amidst all kinds of praises, the word trash was simply too distant and unfamiliar. Sai Ching waved his hand. I'm helping you train your disciples, yet you're spouting so much indecisive nonsense. If you're not trash, then what are you? Sai Ching, you're a mighty prince, yet you've insulted us like this. Do you still want to continue being the Marquis of Rui? Open the dragon arena and let out all our disciples. The golden core cultivator finally reacted and felt a deep sense of anger. His body glowed faintly as he emitted an astonishing aura that soared into the sky. In the Battle of Burial Mound Mountain, the golden core cultivators who died in battle were all from the 100 schools of thought. The orthodox forces of the great Xia dynasty suffered a heavy blow. If not for Jiyu Yangying's presence, the forces of the sect would have long taken the opportunity to expand. As a result, most of the golden core cultivators invited onto the Soaring Clouds terrace came from sects. The few golden core cultivators from the 100 schools of thought were all afraid of Prince Sai Ching's identity. Not only were they unable to say anything, but if they actually began fighting, they could only stand on the Marquis of Rui's side. They all looked at Jiyu Yangying for help. As for the golden core cultivators from sects, they did not have so many concerns over Sai Ching's identity. However, they were rather fearful of Jiyu Yangying. Jiyu Yangying had stayed in the Rui Commandery for many years. Her influence was much greater than Sai Ching's when he had just arrived. If she stood on Sai Ching's side, Sai Bao definitely would not just stand by and watch, and the golden core cultivators from the 100 schools of thought would follow her lead. That way, their strengths would be roughly the same. Perhaps they could only forcefully swallow this bitter pill today. To Sai Ching, Jiyu Yangying's attitude was extremely important. For a moment, everyone's gazes gathered on Jiyu Yangying. If a Ching wants to go his own way, how can I stop him? Jiyu Yangying strode out and arrived on the terrace, staying out of the matter. Sai Bao obviously followed closely behind. Although the way she referred to him as a Qing made Sai Qing frown slightly, he eased up slightly when she did not get involved. The greatest problem had been dealt with. The scenery here is quite nice. Why don't you come over and take a look? Jiyu Yangying then turned around and called over the Golden Core cultivators from the 100 schools of thought. They all let out a sigh of relief and bowed towards Sai Qing coldly but politely before arriving beside Jiyu Yangying. Although they could not help but acknowledge Sai Qing's identity, none of them agreed with him from the bottom of their hearts. The cultivators of the sects all riled up. Sure enough, Jiyu Yangying was not on his side. Just like that, there were only 3 opponents, but they all came from the Dragon Province. They could not be underestimated, and the prince's identity was rather troublesome too. Hey, why aren't you two getting over here? Jiyu Yangying said again. She was actually referring to Jiozhen and Yi Dan. As you command, Commander. Jiozhen waved his black feather fan and smiled. He actually cast Sai Qing aside and strode out. Yi Dan followed closely behind with his hands by his side. He glanced back at the cultivators of the sects and sniggered viciously. Just like that, only Sai Qing was left. Faced with the Golden Core cultivators, they looked at one another. They had no idea what Sai Qing was trying to do. Yangying knows me best. Sai Qing praised loudly. His face sank. You've been eating and drinking for so many days, watching these boring matches. You must be sick of it. What do you mean? You want us to fight you one by one? Don't even think about it. None of them were idiots. Sai Qing was at the peak of the Golden Core realm, and he practiced the cultivation method of the imperial family. In terms of one-on-one combat, probably no one present was his opponent. I have no time to fight trash one by one. Come at me together. You only have me as your opponent. You fear the North Moon because he defeated a group of demon commanders. From today onwards, you will fear me too. Burning passion filled Sai Qing's eyes. None of the battles he watched could compare to the joy of personally taking part. Chapter 644. The Golden Core cultivators used all sorts of methods. Some activated 9 small flags, forming a large formation that enveloped Sai Qing's head. Some of them cast spells, turning into boulders that smashed towards Sai Qing. Some turned their divine sense into a steel awl, directly attacking Sai Qing's mind. Many flying swords turned into streaks of sharp light that resembled lightning, weaving in the sky and sealing off Sai Qing's dodging methods. Without any practice, their coordination was flawless. They were determined to teach Sai Qing a lesson. A dragon's roar rang out incessantly from the sky. Sai Qing turned into a black dragon that was several dozen zhong long, complete with scales and claws. He broke through the formation and the layers of light, galloping in the sky above the city. With a swing of the black dragon's tail, he sent a Golden Core cultivator flying. Jiyu Yangying said, I didn't expect him to have cultivated the Black Emperor Dragon scripture to such a level. No wonder he is ranked 11th. The great Xia royal family had many peerless techniques, known as the 3 graves and 5 classics, 8 chains, and 9 mounds. The Black Emperor Dragon scripture that Sai Qing cultivated was one of the 5 classics. It was an extraordinary technique. Not only could it be cultivated to the king's realm, it could even allow a cultivator to directly ascend. Its might was even greater. 4 ordinary Golden Core cultivators, having a technique that could allow them to cultivate to the nascent soul realm and undergo the 3rd heavenly tribulation was already their greatest hope. They could not imagine how powerful the Black Emperor Dragon scripture was. Sai Bao said solemnly, with this technique alone, Sai Qing is undefeatable. If he wants to fight, he will fight. If he wants to leave, he will leave. No one can stop him. The Golden Core cultivators were not to be outdone. They used their trump cards, powerful moves that could split mountains and sever rivers, blasting towards the Black Dragon. The Black Dragon's massive figure suddenly shrunk to only a few feet long, avoiding most of the attacks. The transformation of a dragon could rise or hide, it could be big or small. When big, it could breathe out mist, when small, it could hide its form. Legend had it that when this technique was cultivated to the extreme, it could shrink to the size of a mustard seed, allowing it to pass through water, fire, mountains, and rocks without being harmed or obstructed. Sai Ching's cultivation had not reached that level, so he could not avoid some attacks. However, they could not break through his layer of black scales. After those powerful attacks missed, some of them flew into the distance, while others landed on the prefectural city below. The Jindan stage cultivators were so excited by the battle that they couldn't care less about the lives of mortals. Guarding the land and herdsmen was not their responsibility. It could be imagined that after the great battle, other than the Marquis's mansion which was protected by the arrays, this flourishing city would become a wasteland. Of the millions of living beings, not even 1 in 10 would survive. When immortals fought, mortals suffered. Jiyu Yangying leaned against the railing and looked at the rays of light that contained terrifying power descending from the sky like meteors. A black shadow suddenly swept past above them. The dragon arena suddenly rose up and swelled with the wind. It was like a huge island floating in the sky. At the same time, it was like a huge protective umbrella that absorbed all the attacks. What a good plan, Jiyu Yangying smiled. Not only did the dragon arena absorb attacks, but it also absorbed the surging battle intent and killing intent that Sai Ching and the others gave off when they fought. As it turned out, Sai Ching had purposefully infuriated them verbally so that he could fight them all alone. This was also part of the plan. If he worked with Yi Dan and Jiao Zhen, sweeping through these golden core cultivators would be far too easy. It would instead be detrimental to the refinement of the Azura field. Jiyu Yangying swiveled her eyebrows. Her sharp gaze pierced through the obstructions and saw an even dark object hidden in a gloomy alleyway. It gave off an icy-cold, deathly aura. If it were not for the fact that a rat had approached the darkness and died on the spot, she would have almost missed it too. He's here too. The explosive flames opened up a charred, empty space in the dense forest with intertwining roots and intertwining canopies, while the man in black had completely vanished. Bright sunlight shone down from above, and the humidity was also dispersed by the blazing wind. Dried branches that were still burning fell to the ground. In a battle between Qi practitioners, a single scarlet talisman was enough to decide the outcome. A good dog doesn't block the way. Don't think I'm afraid to kill you just because you're a dog to a prince. Phew, I can't stay here for long. I better hurry up and leave. Just when Hua Chenglu was about to continue on her way, she suddenly felt her feet shake. The roots that were even denser and more complicated than human blood suddenly burst out of the earth. They wriggled about like thousands of insects and snakes, wrapping around her and binding her firmly. In the charred earth, the man in black leapt out with soil and rocks in his hands. Although he was covered in dust and in a rather horrible shape, he was clearly unscathed. In the moment Hua Chenglu used the scarlet talisman, he used an earth-submerging talisman as well, burrowing deep into the ground and avoiding most of the damage. Although it was only a high-grade yellow talisman, and he had to find a way to dig it out of the ground after using it, it had miraculous effects at a crucial moment. He was still shaken up inside. He had never thought Hua Chenglu would be so vicious at such a young age, and she had used a scarlet talisman right off the bat. Just now, if he had been slightly slower, he would have been smashed to smithereens. Viciousness filled his face. If I let you die easily, then I'm not a man. Hua Chenglu struggled as hard as she could, but it was impossible for her to break free. Her hands were firmly entangled by the roots, preventing her from reaching for her 100 treasures pouch. She was like a beautiful butterfly stuck in a spider's web. The man in black took a step forward. Suddenly, he heard a violent whistle in the sky, suddenly drawing closer. He raised his head in surprise. Li Qingshan sent his soul sense deep into the Three Absolutes calligraphy and saw a wondrous sight he had never seen before. Lines and lines hovered in the air like stars. He had refined many arcane artifacts before, but this was the first time he had encountered something like this. The Three Absolutes calligraphy really was no regular arcane artifact. It was worth looking forward to. On the snowy cliff, as he channeled spiritual qi into the Three Absolutes calligraphy, it shone with resplendent light, becoming brighter and brighter. Below the snowy mountain, the qi practitioners were locked in a fierce struggle. Blades and swords clashed as they fought fiercely. Even if someone noticed the faint light at the top of the snowy mountain, they would not be able to pay attention to it right now. A battle like this unfolded across the entire dragon arena. However, Sai Ching's words had thrown them into an uproar, but they did not immediately engage in a battle to the death like Sai Ching had hoped. They all held back when they struck out. After determining a victor, they would say, "I admire you," and they would say, "Thank you for going easy on me." Regardless of whether they were furious or not, they still maintained the principles of the cultivation community on the surface. As a matter of fact, many foundation establishment cultivators refused to fight Qi practitioners from other sects or schools out of consideration for their status. Even if they did fight, they would only take their medals. They would never rob or kill again. The inertia left behind by several thousand years of peace could not be broken with just a few words from a single person. Sai Ching seemed to have miscalculated in this aspect. This was not the Dragon Province after all. There was no atmosphere of bloody battles. Cultivators were not exactly righteous, but they were not demonic cultivators either. Sure enough, they're all trash from top to bottom. They don't even know what bloodthirst and killing intent are. These old bastards are still afraid to kill me even now. Only that Li Qingshan is something. Looks like I'll have to use that move. Sai Ching, who had turned into a black dragon and soared through the air, was about to engage in a fierce battle with the Golden Core cultivators, so he diverted his attention. In the dragon arena, there was a flash of blood-red light. The azure sky in the battlefields was dyed with a layer of blood red. The blood-red color was so thin that even if cultivators focused their attention, they would struggle to notice anything amiss. Li Qingshan suddenly opened his eyes and raised his head at the sky. All he saw were thick, frozen clouds and howling wind and snow. In that moment earlier, the tiger demon that had been suppressed by the spirit turtle and deposited in his sea of consciousness let out a deep growl. Boundless killing intent enveloped him, but the killing intent was far too thin and chaotic. It did not originate from a specific target, nor was it directed at him. What's that kid, Sai Ching, up to now? Thinking of that, Li Qingshan closed his eyes again and devoted his mind to the three absolutes calligraphy. He did not stop channeling spiritual qi during this process. The three absolutes calligraphy was like a whale sucking in water, greedily sucking away his spiritual qi until 30% of his sea of qi was empty. Just now, it had stopped. It shone with extremely resplendent light. Li Qingshan was slightly surprised. He was a peak foundation establishment cultivator. His spiritual qi surpassed regular foundation establishment cultivators, yet the three absolutes calligraphy was only a mid-grade spiritual artifact. There was no time to think too much. According to his past experience of refining the cursive sword calligraphy, a storm was about to arrive. Sure enough, in that moment, all of the spiritual qi was converted into sharp sword qi from the three absolutes calligraphy, flowing against the flow through his meridians and rampaging through his body wildly. At the same time, in the void world where all kinds of strokes were floating, the horizontal and vertical strokes suddenly became round and full like balloons filled with air. They were filled with an incomparably sharp sword intent and flew toward him. Li Qingshan seemed to see the five absolute sword immortal wielding his brush as a sword and swinging it around after drinking. It was almost like an illusion, but he had no doubt that if he were struck by these strokes, his soul would definitely be severely damaged. If he were a regular foundation establishment cultivator, they would be heavily injured even if they managed to survive an internal and external attack like this. His body shuddered and his muscles bulged, becoming 100 times tougher than rock. His tightly shut eyes immediately turned scarlet red. The sword qi rampaged through his body, but it was unable to break through the ox demon's mountainous body. It was forcefully guided into his sea of qi. However, they were still like huge fish wreaking havoc in his sea of qi. Not only did the sword qi not weaken, but it even absorbed even more spiritual qi instead, becoming sharper and sharper. If he were a regular foundation establishment cultivator, all he could do was watch helplessly as his spiritual qi was drained dry and his body forcefully ripped apart by the sword qi. But before that, his consciousness would have already been shattered by the sword intent. Who would have thought refining a mid-grade arcane artifact would actually be filled with such terrifying danger? The spirit turtle suppresses the seas. Li Qingshan bellowed inside. The spirit turtle's demon core sank into his sea of qi and suppressed all of the sword qi. The figure of the spirit turtle directly appeared in his sea of consciousness, blocking all of the sword intent. Originally, he thought that would be a success, but the three absolutes calligraphy showed no signs of being refined. With a thought, the figure of the tiger demon leapt out, opening its gaping mouth and devouring all of the sword intent. Chapter 645. As the tiger demon swallowed all of the sword intent in a single gulp, the various strokes of the sword intent that were grand, profound, heavy, light, and so on flew towards a single point at the same time, vaguely forming a section of calligraphy that recorded the supreme path of the sword. However, before Li Qingshan could even look at it, it had vanished into thin air in the blink of an eye. In the end, all of the strokes connected with one another like building blocks, forming a black sword. It probably extended from the tip to the middle of the sword, but it was incomplete. The light on the three absolutes calligraphy immediately began to vanish. Li Qingshan opened his eyes and saw that the scroll was no longer filled with crisscrossing strokes. Instead, it formed the same incomplete sword as the one in his sea of consciousness. The unruly strands of sword qi in his sea of qi automatically merged together as well. Three identical swords appeared in the scroll, in his sea of consciousness, and in his dantian. They also contained the essence of calligraphy, the sword, and the painting. So this is the original appearance of the three absolutes calligraphy. The complete three absolutes calligraphy should depict a sword, but after it was split up, all of the strokes split up, forming that wondrous image. Refining the three absolutes calligraphy is basically even more dangerous than facing off against golden core cultivators. If I hadn't cultivated the 9 transformations of the demonic and divine, I probably would have died. Li Qingshan relaxed the spirit turtle suppression, and the incomplete sword in his dantian began to absorb spiritual qi automatically again. He was slightly surprised, but he discovered very soon that he could control the absorption. Moreover, as it absorbed more and more, the sword qi became sharper and sharper. The arts of the boundless ocean recovered spiritual qi very quickly anyway, so he just allowed the incomplete sword to absorb spiritual qi. He ingested another pill to recover spiritual qi and wanted to see how much it could grow. At this moment, he felt spiritual qi rapidly approach him. The surrounding temperature suddenly plummeted. Is it finally here? He raised his head and looked over. A blue ball of ice descended from the sky with a cold current. However, the strange thing was that the ice ball's target was not him. It landed far away at the foot of the mountain and kicked up an ice storm, swallowing the space within a radius of several dozen meters. A qi practitioner reacted slightly slower and was caught up in it. He was immediately frozen into an ice sculpture and reduced to dust. Even the spiritual artifact sword in his hand was not spared. What a powerful chill. Li Qingshan pierced through the wind and snow, flying down and shattering that solid ball of ice. From the very center, he took out a sparkling and beautiful snowflake. This seems to be a technique of Ice Couple Palace. To have such power, only a golden core cultivator can do it. He vaguely recalled that he had once seen an ice-cold woman on the soaring cloud platform. That was most likely the palace mistress of the Ice Couple Palace. However, because she was only at the early golden core stage, he did not pay too much attention to her. What happened outside? Li Qingshan did not know anything about the Azura field, so he could not guess what was going on. He wanted his clone to come over and take a look, so that he could have another way to deal with the situation. However, his clone was currently using the water god seal to refine the water vein, so he did not dare to take the risk. It just so happened that the carp he named Lil Red was circling around his clone, asking for medicinal pills to eat, creating ripples in the air. A thought flashed in his mind, and he said, "Open your mouth." Lil Red immediately opened its mouth. Its wooden fish eyes seemed to be filled with eagerness. Li Qingshan sealed up the aura of the water god seal and left behind a sliver of his soul sense, tossing it into its mouth. You sure are lucky. Hurry up and swim back to Mooncourt Lake. If you lose it, do you know of a dish called sweet and sour carp? Lil Red opened its mouth again, as if it wanted to eat it. Smack. Li Qingshan smacked its head. I'm cooking you. Lil Red immediately dove into the water and rapidly shrank, turning into the size of a regular carp. It turned into a red streak and swam in the direction of Mooncourt Lake. Right now, the forces of the human cultivators were all tied up in the prefectural city, while the diamonds of the entire Rui commandery had been terrorized by him. Basically, wherever he went after refining the water vein, they would either flee at the sight of him or surrender at the sight of him. Presumably, there were no ignorant bastards bold enough to kill his subordinates so casually. After arranging this, his clone took off, going straight into the depths of the clouds and flying in the direction of the prefectural city. Below the snowy mountain, Li Qingshan thought in some confusion, didn't those guys want to kill me? Why haven't they come after so long? He could not be bothered with waiting here the entire time, and he only had half of his spiritual chi left after the incomplete sword devoured it. Although he was confident that it was enough to kill those people, he still had to use his full strength to catch a rabbit. As a result, he might as well wander around and change locations until his spiritual chi recovered. 18 Foundation establishment cultivators had already gathered in the maze of the stone forest. Someone said impatiently, "Why hasn't that fire barbarian come yet?" Yeah, with his cultivation, he should have arrived a long time ago. The scarred man said, "Looks like he doesn't plan on rendezvousing with us." The dwarf said, "That barbarian doesn't know how to cooperate at all. We're better off without him. We're not going to wait for him. Let's go." The prey has begun to move, and it's moving very quickly. Let's go after him. Hua Changlu also heard the whistling from the distant horizon. Through the circular hole in the canopy, she saw grayish-white rocks the size of houses. One of them flew in their direction. Shock filled the man's eyes. He no longer paid any attention to Hua Changlu, using another earth-submerging talisman to burrow deep into the ground. Hong, 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 the huge rocks bombarded the ground one after another, and the ground seemed to have turned into a huge drum that was being beaten fiercely. Huge craters were formed, and a shock wave spread out in all directions. The power was not as simple as a huge rock falling from the sky, but it was also the powerful spirit energy of a golden core cultivator. Hua Changlu was not unlucky enough to have a huge rock directly smashed into her head, but the rock only landed over 30 meters away. She felt her entire body shudder, and even her bones became numb. The shockwave swept over her like a hot knife through butter, sending her flying. Only a huge rock failed to hit the ground. Instead, it just happened to fly towards the great banyan tree in the center of the sea of trees. The sun vines wrapped around it and twisted it to pieces. Out! Hua Changlu groaned and sat up from the pile of shattered wood. She felt her entire body ache. She removed the protective talisman around her neck. It had already been completely destroyed. If it were not for the fact that the protective talisman had automatically activated at a critical moment, she would have been doomed. The ground nearby moved, and the cultivator in black crawled out. He lay on the ground and vomited large mouthfuls of blood. He had used the same move, but he had made a huge miscalculation this time. If the shockwave was said to be a natural wave of air, then the tremor caused by the falling boulder contained the magical power of a Jindan stage cultivator. He was hiding underground, so his internal organs were shaken to the point of rupturing, and he suffered extremely serious internal injuries. Hua Changlu immediately felt like her entire body was no longer in pain. She leapt up from the ground and used a flying blade, swinging it viciously at the man's head. "Ha ha, go die, bumpkin." Chapter 646. The man in black rolled on the ground, and the flying dagger missed. He had already shoved a pill into his mouth. The flying dagger turned around and pressed forward again. Roar! He produced a beast-like roar, and his legs erupted with startling power. He lunged towards Hua Changlu with a speed that completely exceeded Qi practitioners. He had ingested a pill that could unleash his potential. Pills like this would inevitably come with side effects, but he was forced to use it in a moment of life and death. If Hua Changlu took out another scarlet talisman, his life would be in danger. He primarily cultivated the wood element, so he was skilled in nurturing his body. He could slowly recover afterwards. Hua Chenglu's lips parted slightly. She was taken aback. She no longer thought about killing the cultivator in black. She pushed off with her slender legs and rushed into the air. A pair of beautiful wings unfurled on her back, and she flew into the sky. The wings were forged from overlapping metal pieces. They were the crystallization of the school of Moism's mechanical arts. Then, she had painted them according to her preferences, so they seemed like real wings. Regular Qi practitioners lacked the ability to fly at high altitudes. As long as they reached a certain altitude, they would be invincible. Of course, the pair of wings was worth a lot as well. The moment she was about to fly out of the sea of trees, her ankles suddenly tightened. A jade-green vine wrapped around her. It was the man in black's spiritual artifact. He pulled her down forcefully. "Get down." "Ah!" Hua Chenglu cried out and fell out of the sky. A thick, powerful hand gripped her slender neck firmly. "Run." The man in black smiled viciously. The veins on his face were clearly visible, which made him seem even more vicious and terrifying. There had always been a great disparity between their cultivation and experience. After ingesting the pill that could unleash his potential, the man in black gained an overwhelming advantage. "If you dare to kill me, my elder brother won't spare you." A sliver of pain appeared on Hua Chenglu's beautiful face, but her eyes remained stubborn. "Kill you? Don't worry, I can't bear to do that right now. Wait until I find a secret place, and then I'll slowly torture you. Don't we have 10 days? By the time your elder brother finds you, you'll already be a corpse, and you'll be completely naked." Hua Chenglu could not help but become afraid. If she really ended up like that, she would be better off dead right now. Was she really a cultivator? "Elder brother, where are you?" "Ahem, I don't have a real brother, but I do have a brother, Brother Li." At this moment, the man in black heard a voice from behind. Hua Chenglu's eyes suddenly lit up. "Big Brother Li." The black-clothed man suddenly turned his head and saw the speaker clearly. It was a burly young man who was looking at him as if he was a dead man. The black-clothed man's expression changed. "Li Qingshan, don't come any closer. If you come any closer, I'll..." He hadn't finished speaking when a flash appeared before his eyes and Li Qingshan had already arrived before him. Li Qingshan casually patted the black-clothed man's shoulder, and the black-clothed man instantly felt as if his bones had been pulled out and he fell weakly to the ground. Hua Chenglu also landed on the ground, almost collapsing. Li Qingshan supported her waist and asked in concern, "Are you fine?" Under the impact of the boulder just now, even though she had the protection of the amulet, she still couldn't avoid some injuries. However, in the tense battle, she had no time to take care of it. Now that she was finally free, she felt pain all over her body. Water spiritual energy permeated from Li Qingshan's hand, and only then did she feel much better. She coughed a few more times and rubbed her neck. Something almost happened. "Fortunately, Sir Commander Li, you came in time. You've become a commander so quickly." Li Qingshan smiled. He had met Hua Chenglu very early on. Although they did not spend much time together after that, he had a very good impression of her. Seeing how the little lowly of the past had become a great beauty, he could not help but sigh over the passage of time. "If you don't mind my cultivation being too weak, I'll still call you that." Hua Chenglu stuck out her tongue, feeling rather embarrassed. The current Li Qingshan could no longer be compared to the past. The difference in cultivation was like an invisible chasm, and their statuses were worlds apart. Seeing how he still remembered old times and did not look down on her, she rejoiced inside. However, she asked in confusion, "Big Brother Li, how did you know I was here?" Li Qingshan's arrival here was not a coincidence. In order to recover his spiritual qi as quickly as possible, he had specially come to the great banyan tree, planning to drink some tree sap like the dwarf. He just happened to hear Hua Chenglu's cry, so he hurried over. "So it's here. Fortunately, you came, or who knows what would have happened," Hua Chenglu said with lingering fear. Hua Chenglu said with lingering fear before becoming furious again. She controlled the flying blade and swung it at the man in black on the ground. "Hold on, I still have use for this person." Li Qingshan caught her flying blade and removed the 100 treasures pouch and 2 medals from the man in black. He tossed them to Hua Chenglu and said, "Just treat it as compensation for the mental damage this bastard has done to you." With a wave of his hand, a white cloud slowly descended. It was filled with people, and from their attire, they were all Saiqing's subordinates. There were around a dozen of them. Although they did not move at all, they were all still alive. These were the captives Li Qingshan had captured along the way. He tossed the man in black onto the cloud and thought, "This should be enough." Hua Chenglu asked in surprise, "Big brother Li, what are you doing?" "Feeding the tree." "Feeding the tree?" "More accurately, feeding the vines. I can't explain it to you in such a short amount of time. I'm going, so you better go meet up with them." Li Qingshan stepped onto the cloud, and Hua Chenglu grabbed his sleeve. "Big brother Li, can I come with you?" "You might be in danger if you come with me," Li Qingshan said. He had no idea when those people would charge over. "I'm not afraid. I beg you." Hua Chenglu brought her palms together and pleaded. "Fair enough. Come on up." Li Qingshan thought about it and felt that it was rather inappropriate for Hua Chenglu to pass through so many battlefields alone. Along the way, he saw that the battles between the cultivators had suddenly become extremely intense. He needed to retrieve the tree sap as soon as possible and then send her to Liu Chongqing's side. He made Hua Chenglu ascend as well, riding the cloud and arriving before the great banyan tree. Retrieving the tree sap was not a simple matter. He needed to pass through the frenzied sun vines first. However, as a cultivator, he was not necessarily faster than the dwarf in terms of speed. He was much larger too, so the difficulty of passing through the sun vines had increased without a doubt. Moreover, he did not understand the pattern of the sun vines' attacks, so he dared not try it recklessly, just in case he accidentally unleashed his demon powers and gave himself away. As a result, he came up with an idea like this. He used these people as bait to draw away the sun vines' attacks, and then he could take advantage of the situation to reap the benefits. Hua Chenglu sighed in amazement, "So big. Why don't you try tossing this guy over?" Li Qingshan picked up the man in black and passed it to Hua Chenglu. He wanted to see how the sun vines would react. He basically wanted her to kill her enemy with her own hand. The man in black was immobilized, but his eyes were filled with shock. He obviously knew how terrifying the sun vines were. "Is this what you call feeding a tree?" Hua Chenglu lifted up the man in black happily before lowering him again. "Can you raise the cloud a little higher?" "What for?" "There's a tree below to catch him. I'm afraid he won't die from the fall." "Haha, don't worry, he'll definitely die. If he doesn't, I'll just throw him again." Hua Chenglu adjusted the man's position so that his head was facing the tree. With a cry, she threw him towards the great banyan tree as hard as she could. She was a cultivator after all. Although she was just a chi practitioner, throwing something that weighed over 50 kilograms was very easy. The man in black slammed his head into the tree. Swish! A sun vine as thick as an arm pierced through him and coiled around him a few times. In the blink of an eye, he was reduced to a dried-up corpse. Hua Chenglu covered her mouth. She never thought the vines would be so powerful, and just now, only the relatively thin sun vines moved. Meanwhile, the huge sun vines that coiled around the tree like dragons did not move at all, as if they could not be bothered with small prey like that. The effects aren't too ideal. Li Qingshan rubbed his chin in thought. Suddenly, with a flash of inspiration, he grabbed a captive and tossed him out as well. He threw him much slower than Hua Chenglu, while the captive flew into the air and let out a despairing howl. He circulated his true chi desperately in an attempt to flee in the opposite direction. When Li Qingshan tossed him out, he released the seal along the way. Immediately, over a dozen sun vines were alarmed. One of them was as thick as Hua Chenglu's waist. Of course, there was a limit to how thick it was, but it was still an improvement. "I see." Li Qingshan smiled. With a step on the cloud, all of them were launched into the air. He struck out with his palms consecutively, sending them flying in different directions. At the same time, he released the seal in their bodies. They all knew they were done for, but with death at hand, all of them struggled as hard as they could, circulating their true chi with everything they had. Several hundred sun vines began to dance about madly. Just when Li Qingshan wanted to follow them closely, he suddenly heard a bellow from behind. Li Qingshan. The bellow rang out from behind. The first word was still far away, but the final word was already 5 kilometers away. Li Qingshan suddenly looked back. It was the group of Foundation establishment cultivators from the Marquis estate charging over. When they saw Li Qingshan use their subordinates and disciples as live bait to feed the golden vines, their eyes were filled with fury. The dwarf used an escape talisman and flew towards Li Qingshan as a streak of light. He could tell what Li Qingshan was planning with a single glance. He would never let him obtain the tree sap to recover his spiritual chi. As long as he could keep him busy for a while, he would be able to block the great banyan tree and end his life. If he dared to force his way through, then all he needed to do was disturb the rhythm of the sun vine's dance slightly, and he would not be able to return. He had learned this move during that duel. Li Qingshan had never expected them to come at such a perfect time. He frowned slightly, grabbed Hua Chenglu, and charged towards the great banyan tree. The dwarf was overjoyed. He cursed, "Idiot." Just as he was about to disturb the sun vines, he saw a strange sword suddenly appear in Li Qingshan's hand, swinging it at him from afar. The sword chi that had fused with 50% of Li Qingshan's spiritual chi traveled from his dantian to his arm, then to the traitorous demon sword. It became even sharper, whistling towards the dwarf. Chapter 647. After swinging his sword, Li Qingshan charged towards the great banyan tree without even looking back. A few sun vines lashed towards him. He hesitated with the traitorous demon's sword in his hand, but he did not swing it. 2 streams of water rose up under his feet, like 2 extended tracks. He suddenly changed direction and slid to the side. Hua Chenglu heard the whistling of the sun vines before glancing at the group of almost 20 Foundation establishment cultivators in pursuit. Her heart leapt into her throat. Only now did she understand what he meant by there might be danger if she stayed with him. This was not just danger. It was basically a matter of life and death. Although he had erased his presence, over a dozen sun vines still shot over, completely sealing off the path ahead. All that was left was a hole the size of a skylight. A short dwarf would be able to pass through easily, but he would be in trouble. "Hold on to me." Hua Chenglu felt her waist tighten. She had been grabbed by his large hand, going from being held beside her to being held in front of her. His other hand passed over her perky bottom and wrapped around her legs. Before she could think of anything else, she hugged him tightly subconsciously, pressing her face against his chest. She was enveloped by his heavy, masculine scent. Li Qingshan took a step back, and waves surged under his feet. The two of them rushed out of the skylight-sized hole with their heads in front and their feet behind. Thump! Hua Chenglu heard a rumble and suddenly realized it was the sound of his heart beating. Compared to her pounding heart, his heartbeat was strong and calm. Even when faced with such terrifying danger, he did not panic at all. Her nervous and terrified feelings eased up as well. She did not regret staying with him at all, as she believed that no matter what danger they faced, this man would protect her. Suddenly, she thought about how he had stood in front of her without any hesitation when they came across each other, facing the undefeatable Grandma Shimon. She had forgotten how she felt back then. Thinking about it now, she felt like she had missed out on something in the past few years. She felt rather lost. Li Qingshan had experienced countless dangers in his life, so a situation like this was really nothing. With the wave-treading form and the arcane artifact shoes, he constantly moved about, passing through the obstructions and arriving beside the great banyan tree in the blink of an eye. Up close, it did not feel like a tree, but a wooden wall of unimaginable length, width, and height. The iron-gray bark was filled with wrinkles, giving off a sturdy and heavy feeling. He was not too worried that the traitorous demon sword would not be able to cut through the bark. After all, even the dwarf could do it. However, just to be cautious, he still used the evil eye on the hilt to observe the weakness of the wooden wall. As the evil eye shone with a strange light, he immediately saw something different. He could not help but let out a soft gasp of surprise. He discovered many round, dark spots on the bark. There seemed to be nothing under the bark. Were there worms in the book? Before he could even consider whether the Banyan Tree King, one of the 10 Demon Kings, would have worms, he glanced back. Sai Ching's lackeys had already closed in. If he failed to break through the blockade in a single stroke, he would face a pincer attack from the Sunvines once he left. It did not matter if he was alone, but what mattered was that he had a little burden like Hua Chenglu with him. He made up his mind. There would be danger either way, so he might as well go in and take a look and satisfy his curiosity. He casually swung the traitorous demon sword. He slammed into the great banyan tree with Hua Chenglu. The wooden wall caved in, producing a circular hole that extended towards the inside. The cut was extremely smooth and neat. The dark space was suddenly illuminated by a ray of light. 2 figures hugging each other tightly followed the light and rushed into the darkness. Li Qingshan stopped and looked back. The bark of the great banyan tree was startlingly thick. It was over 10 meters thick, and it was filled with extremely dense spiritual energy. If it were not for the traitorous demon sword's special ability, he would have struggled to discover the hidden hole no matter how powerful his soul sense was, much less carve out the cave in a single stroke. He would have been unable to avoid the tragedy of running into a tree. However, they had finally made it in. Li Qingshan exhaled. He could feel that Hua Chenglu was still wrapped tightly around him, so he could not help but smile. "Hey, you can let go now." "Ah." Hua Chenglu let go in a hurry. Her face was flushed, and her heart that had calmed down after so much difficulty began to thump violently again, but it was not because of fear. She studied the surroundings with feigned calmness, and her eyes gradually grew accustomed to the darkness. All she saw was a long cave that extended to who knew where. "Are we in the tree?" "Yeah." The streak of light suddenly began to shrink. Li Qingshan looked back and saw that the bark was closing up at a startling rate. It closed up completely very soon, and it became completely dark. Hua Chenglu could not help but draw closer to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan smiled. "Come, I'll treat you to something good." He picked up the piece of bark that resembled a pillar. It gave off an extremely refreshing smell. "Eat the tree?" Hua Chenglu extended the tip of her tongue hesitantly and licked it gently. Immediately, wood spiritual energy surged into her body, filling her mouth with a refreshing fragrance. The hidden wounds from the battle rapidly healed as well, so she could not help but lick it a few more times. "Can't you just take off a piece? Just how long are you going to lick it?" "Here." Li Qingshan could not help but laugh aloud. He broke off a piece and gave it to her. However, her current posture just now was far too alluring. Hua Chenglu also discovered that her current posture just now was rather indecent. Her face heated up as she accepted the piece of wood and shoved it into her mouth, biting down viciously. She cried out and covered her face as she stamped her feet. "You're bullying me. How am I supposed to bite something so hard?" "Then take your time sucking on it." Li Qingshan sniggered. He found this topic to be very interesting. He licked, bit, and sucked on it. Looking at her pink, moist lips, he wondered just who would be blessed with such a thing in the future. Hua Chenglu was no longer a child. She had spent quite a lot of time in the building, so how could she not tell that he was teasing her? If other men had said that, she would have been infuriated a long time ago, but she could not get angry with him. She said in dissatisfaction, "Big brother Li, you're so naughty." "So much for calling you big brother. Once I get back, I'll tell sister Cheongji and my elder brother." That was what she said, but even if Hua Sungzon and Han Cheongji pressed her, she would never tell them these things. All right. It's my fault. There's a saying that you can't play around with a friend's sister." Li Qingshan carried the pillar of bark and casually broke off a piece, shoving it into his mouth and chewing it. The bark was very hard, but it was not as hard as his teeth. There was a hint of sweetness in the fragrance of the vegetation. It felt a little like eating sugar cane. When he found it tasteless, he spat it out and broke off another piece. The recovery rate of the spiritual qi in his dantian suddenly sped up. Then he took out the 3 absolutes calligraphy and condensed a strand of sword qi in his body again, allowing it to absorb and strengthen his spiritual qi. He thought, 50% of spiritual qi is already so impressive. If it's 100%, Won't I even be able to kill golden core cultivators? Chapter 648. From the moment Li Qingshan swung his sword to charging into the great banyan tree with Hua Changlu, the series of actions seemed to have taken a long time to describe, but it was actually as smooth as flowing water. It was all done in a single breath. By the time the pursuers arrived before the great banyan tree, Li Qingshan had already vanished into the tree hole. Meanwhile, the dwarf remained frozen in the air, maintaining a defensive posture. Why didn't you stop him? Amidst the questioning, everyone finally noticed his abnormality. His eyes were bulging out, and his mouth was half open as he produced an indecipherable sound. His body trembled slightly as if he was doing his best to suppress something. Oi, what's wrong? The scarred man frowned and lightly patted the dwarf's shoulder. The dwarf's eyes rolled back and he suddenly opened his mouth wide, letting out a blood-curdling scream as if someone was strangling him. This made him, who was already somewhat strange, become abnormally terrifying. However, this terror only lasted for an instant. With a bang that was neither too loud nor too soft, the dwarf exploded in the air, turning into a bloody mist. Everyone was stunned. Their gazes all gathered on the scarred man, as it seemed like he had killed the dwarf with a single slap. The scarred man stared at his own hand, stunned on the spot. When Qingshan swung his sword, there wasn't any earth-shattering momentum. Only the dwarf could truly feel the terrifying sword intent contained within it. No one could have imagined that the dwarf would die under that sword. Before they could return to their senses, countless sharp strands of sword chi pierced through the bloody mist in that instant, shooting off in all directions and scattering everyone. The scarred man flew over 30 meters away before stabilizing himself. The arms he had placed in front of him were covered in blood. Some of the wounds were so deep that bone could be seen. The others were caught up in the sword chi as well. Although they all had protective arcane artifacts or spiritual artifacts, it had happened right in front of them, and they were all in shock. They could not activate them in time, so the sword chi easily cut through their protective spiritual energy and left behind sword wounds on their bodies. Although the wounds were not fatal, their morale took a huge hit. They looked at one another in shock. In just one exchange with Li Qingshan, one of the strongest dwarfs had been killed in one move. His death had been inexplicable, and almost everyone had been injured. Although the dwarf's personality was somewhat strange, his strength was publicly acknowledged to be valiant. Not to mention facing a Foundation establishment cultivator, even if he faced an ordinary golden core cultivator, he would still be able to protect himself to a certain extent. In a situation where he had set up his defenses, it was still difficult for him to escape death. If Li Qingshan used this move against them, who could escape? Is he really a Foundation establishment cultivator? Could it be a golden core cultivator who has been hiding his strength? It had to be said that this guess was quite reliable. However, it was immediately refuted. Of course he's a Foundation establishment cultivator. If he was a golden core cultivator, he would have killed us all long ago. Why would he bother hiding? Then tell me, why is his attack so powerful? That person was speechless. Another person guessed, the thing he took out just now has a strange shape. Could it be a magic treasure? Don't talk nonsense. How could a Foundation establishment cultivator be able to activate a magic treasure? That's right, even a golden core cultivator wouldn't have one. The dozen or so people discussed animatedly, unable to hide the worry on their faces. The mission that they had thought to be extremely simple had suddenly become so troublesome. It was unexpected. The scarred brawny man growled, "All of you, shut up. This move of his looks ordinary, but he must have paid a huge price to use it. He can't use it consecutively, or else he would have killed us all with just one sword. Why would he need to run?" His guess was indeed correct. The reason why Li Qingshan's sword could have such power was not solely because of the effect of sword chi. Otherwise, even if it had been infused with 50% of his spiritual energy, the most it would have been able to do was send the dwarf flying and heavily injure him. It would definitely not have been able to create such a sure-kill effect. At that moment, he activated the ability of the traitorous demon sword and found an opening. Sword chi whistled through the air, burrowing into the dwarf's body. Like a rebel wildfire, It wreaked havoc. The dwarf mobilized his spiritual energy in an attempt to suppress it, but he encountered the same situation as Li Qingshan. Not only was the sword qi not suppressed, it instead devoured his spiritual energy and grew stronger. As a result, the dwarf froze in midair, desperately trying to maintain his tottering body. The slap from the scarred brawny man immediately broke the final balance. He could no longer suppress the sword qi, and it all burst out of his body. The sword qi only had such great power because it was infused with the spiritual energy of two people. However, after infusing with the dwarf's spiritual energy, it also lost the strange ability to devour spiritual energy to strengthen itself. Otherwise, at least 3 or 4 of these cultivators would have died. After swinging this sword, not only did Li Qingshan have to accumulate sword qi again, the demon heart that served as the eye on the hilt of the traitorous demon sword had also been expended quite a bit. However, the terrifying power of the combination of the 3 absolutes calligraphy and the traitorous demon sword had completely manifested itself, and it was possible for these 2 items to become even more powerful. Hearing the scarred man's words, these people were experienced in battle after all. They found it to be extremely reasonable, so they calmed down very quickly. Then what do we do now? We wait. No matter where he comes out, he'll be attacked by the sun vines first. If we trap him inside, he'll be dead for sure. What if he never comes out? Yeah, with how disadvantageous the situation is, I'd rather hide as well. We still have to collect medals. We can't waste all of our time on him. Before long, this battlefield will vanish, and he'll be forcefully teleported to a nearby battlefield. We'll be teleported with him, and we'll be gathered together, said the scarred man. Sai Qing had set down this rule to increase the intensity of the battle. Everyone smiled. They felt like the rules that His Highness Sai Qing had set down were truly ingenious. If Li Qingshan discovered in the blink of an eye that the great banyan tree that protected him had vanished, only to be surrounded by them, what would that be like? By then, before Li Qingshan could even swing his sword, they would unleash their killing moves together. It would be enough to kill him a dozen times over. Let's go in and take a look. It'll be best if we can find a safe place for you to hide. I'll finish them all off before coming back for you. Li Qingshan strode towards the depths of the cavern. It was no longer just out of curiosity. Instead, he could sense that the wood spiritual qi in the depths was extremely dense. Just a piece of bark was already so great. If he could dig out a piece of the tree heart, it might be even more nourishing. And, he needed to recover his spiritual qi. He planned on nurturing the incomplete sword qi in his dantian to its full power. It's so dangerous, so why do we have to go out? Can't we just stay here? Hua Chenglu caught up to him in a hurry. She also understood that once Li Qingshan went out, he would be caught in a pincer attack. It would be extraordinarily dangerous. And, as soon as she thought about how she would be left alone in the pitch-black tree hole, she felt very uneasy. Haven't you seen the rules of the competition? With each passing day, many battlefields will vanish. We'll be directly teleported to a nearby battlefield, and it's very likely for us to be gathered together. By then, it'll be fine for me, but you can't just hide in my arms the entire time, right? Li Qingshan said as he walked. He saw how Hua Chenglu's beautiful face was dyed with worry, so he teased her again. Hua Chenglu was in no mood to respond to his joke. She wanted to say, it might not be such a coincidence. It's this battlefield. However, as the master of the Dragon Arena, Sai Qing clearly would not stop until he killed Li Qingshan. It really might be such a coincidence. If it were not for her, he might not have forced his way through the sun vines and entered the tree hole. He could have directly fled. She stopped and lowered her head. Sorry, big brother Li. I've dragged you down. She vaguely understood that this was the chasm between the strong and the weak. Even if the strong were not arrogant and the weak were willing to get close to them, they still walked in different worlds. Once they encountered danger, it would be impossible for them to fight together. Suddenly, she felt rather sad. Don't say something so depressing. What do you mean drag me down? If I carry you with one hand and wield my sword with the other, I can still kill them all. I'm just afraid you'll be scared out of your wits, which is why I held back my murderousness slightly and let them live a little longer. Li Qingshan smiled, purposefully acting like he was full of himself. Hua Chenglu smiled. I don't believe you. She knew Li Qingshan was very powerful, but that was close to 20 Foundation establishment cultivators. Moreover, she had heard from Hua Sengzon that these cultivators from the Dragon Province were all extremely powerful. However, for some reason, she became rather fascinated by the scene Li Qingshan had described. She imagined him protecting her in his arms while blades and swords rained down from all directions, wielding his sword as he rampaged through the powerful enemies, while she listened to his heartbeat fearlessly and stared at his face. She shook her head and hurriedly dismissed the scene from her mind. Why am I thinking about this? He's engaged to big sister Han. And even if he's not engaged, so what? Li Qingshan saw her shake her head and thought she did not believe him. He smiled. Seeing is believing. Didn't I already kill that dwarf while holding you? Ah, you killed him? Hua Chenglu was astounded. She only saw the dwarf assume a defensive posture after Li Qingshan swung his sword. She never thought he would actually be killed in a single stroke. That's why you don't have to worry. Let's go. Li Qingshan patted her shoulder and made his way into the depths of the cavern. After taking a few steps, he looked back and said, "Oh right, there's something else I forgot to tell you." Hua Chenglu was currently surprised by his strength. Seeing how serious he was as if he had something important to tell her, she dismissed her thoughts in a hurry and asked, "What is it?" Li Qingshan smiled. "Girl, you've developed quite well. Big brother Li." Hua Chenglu crossed her arms before her chest. Her face was filled with embarrassment and annoyance. Haha, that's the last thing. The two of them rapidly advanced through the mountainous banyan tree through the tree hole that had been carved out by some unknown object. The cave did not lead directly to the heart of the tree. Instead, it constantly twisted and turned. Suddenly, there was a rustle in the darkness. In the beginning, it was extremely soft, but the further they advanced, the louder it became. It was sharp and ear-piercing. "Big brother Li, what's that sound?" Hua Chenglu frowned. "You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.